Sort of Coming Chapter 1174. Chapter 1174. The Invincible Hand on the Wine Table. Qing Shan and Gao Ren have an appointment at first sight. There are thousands of flowers outside the building, when the pen has not retreated. In the mirror of Bai Yunqing, before the bright moon falls. The big sunrise in the East China Sea is another day. A little girl in black, wrapped in cotton cloth, holding a green bamboo cane, and carrying a golden pole on her shoulders. The mountain patrol class in the early morning has ended, and she is going out to explore the world. A few days ago, she had made an appointment with the left guardian of the Dragon Lane, the date, time, and they met at the meeting point in the Huimeng Mountain. Today, they will go to Huanghu Mountain together. Running on a small road in the back mountain of Jisa Peak, two short legs ran like a wheel. The wind blows through the mountains and forests, blowing in large chunks, the bamboo leaves rustle, the pines burst into waves, and the sound of nature is heard. As the days of the good man Shanju returning home were getting longer and longer, the courage of the right protector was getting bigger and bigger day by day. Nowadays, not only do they patrol the mountains between Jisa Peak and Jiling Peak in the morning and evening, but Xiaomi Mili occasionally takes a trip to the Huimeng Mountain, and even travels all the way to Huanghu Mountain. Mainly because I heard Jingqing say that there is a Sesame official who is the county magistrate who often goes fishing and is called Fu Hu. He seems to be the parent official of Pingnan County. It's not that the millet grains are distressed for Fu Hu's fish catch, but the main reason is that the magistrate Fu is an ordinary master who has never cultivated qi, but there are a lot of alien aquariums in the lake. There are several herrings, and the county magistrate Fu should not be caught by fish. Huanghu Mountain used to be the site under the water flood, and a water house was built at the bottom of the lake. The two Dragon King baskets of Qin Wanqiu and Qin Lingjun were forged into a landscape formation here. There are a few old tea trees on the mountain, plus the spring water of Yuanmu Peak. Every year before the rain, the old cook will go up to the mountain to pick tea in person, and return to the house to fry tea and make tea. Every time the millet drinks tea, he will praise a few words, okay. The taste is sweet. In a pavilion on the mountain road north of Huimeng Mountain, Xiaomi met the Zhuhufa, and together they wandered off to Huanghu Mountain. He took out the cakes that he had prepared a long time ago, and gave half of them to Hufazhua. They were peach cakes and almond cakes from their own New Year's shop in Kolongxiang. If you don't eat it, you don't give face, and it's easy to be billed by millet grains, and then be settled by Pei Qian after returning home in autumn. Eat, lose portion. Millet grains looked left and right, and there was no one around, so he pulled out a satin cloak from the cotton satchel. As a result, in a pavilion with white walls and black tiles in front, a figure in a blue shirt and a long coat suddenly walked out, with gentle eyes and a smile on his face, looking at the grain of millet who took care of himself. Xiaomi Mili looked embarrassed, ran quickly to the good mountain master who came without saying hello, and said shyly, "It's a bit naive. This navy blue cape, worn on the body of the millet, is just the right size. At first glance, it is the craftsmanship of an old cook. Why is it naive? It's because you can't get to the point that you feel awkward." While speaking, Chen Pingan made a two-finger twist, and then flicked his wrist. Women on the rivers and lakes are like this. Millet grains followed suit, stretched out a hand to pull a corner of his cloak, and then shook his wrist vigorously, making a rattling sound. "Oh, oh, oh, oh. I see." Chen Pingan said solemnly, "Do you still feel childish now?" Millet grain grinned and said, "It's majestic and powerful." Chen Pingan nodded to the local dog, and it immediately understood it and played it by himself. I chatted with Xiaomi Li about the current situation of the next sect, and said that Qingping Jianzong has newly established 3 government departments, 6 divisions and 8 bureaus. Millet grains were confused, frowning 2 pale yellow eyebrows. "Remember to be serious. Listen to God, is there such a good thing? After the big white goose became the suzerain, it was different, but it was hard to give people an official hat. Chen Pingon smiled and said, Sect Master Chui is teaching me to do things. Millet blinked. Chen Pingon restrained his smile. Didn't you tell Pei Qian about the hero book? Xiaomi Milik shook his head vigorously. I made an appointment with Bai Shou by Jianxian, the peak master of Taihui Jianzong Pian Ran Peak, so I can't talk about this. But the trivial matter of Bai Shou calling the good man Mountain Lord Brotherhood, Xiaomi Mili told Pei Qian one by one. At that time, Pei Qian had a dark face and said it was fine, and wrote it down. Xiaomi Mili said something from the bottom of his heart. Bai Shou has a really good relationship with the good person Mountain Master. It can be seen that although Bai Jianxian never said it, he actually admires the good person Mountain Master in his heart. Well, the old cook made an analogy, saying that it is like a teenager who meets an adult who admires from the bottom of his heart, because he is worried that the two sides have nothing to talk about, so he likes to say that I can drink. Pei Qian's face softened and nodded, saying that Bai Shou can become Lu Jiangxian's direct disciple, and it is only through the master's matchmaking. This guy has always talked no big or small, and he never called Master Lu Jianxian before. No. Chen Pingon rubbed his chin, since it wasn't Millet Grains tipping off the news, who leaked the news to Pei Qian. Millet scratched her face, still feeling that she had to hint at the good man Mountain Master. Definitely not Jing Qing. Chen Pingon patted the little girl's head, and pretended to be surprised, so it turns out, it seems that I wronged Jing Qing. Chen Pingon let the millet ride on his neck. Just like a father pampering his own daughter. The little girl put her arms on the head of the good man Mountain Master, her round chin rested on her arms, squinted and smiled, and told the good man Mountain Master what fun things she saw on the way of the mountain tour the day before yesterday and the day before yesterday. For example, there is a big toad on the road, it can be slow. Near the Xuxing Pavilion, a bird whose name could not be called built a nest. The pavilion with the longest name is 36 steps away, and those tea slices are almost ready to eat. It's a pity that the kiwi fruit is still small, and someone secretly carved words on a red lacquer pillar in the rain pavilion. Magpies are twittering, and they often announce the good news on the branches. Wow, so many new things, it's too interesting. No, it's very interesting. Mr. Da is a neighbor, the abbot of Beiyue Pian Mountain's ordination ceremony. Zhou Gua is responsible for going to Zhongyue Fizi Mountain. Min Wen and Li Ho are responsible for the ordination ceremony of Dongyue Mountain and Siye Ganzhou Mountain respectively. Previously, they only stayed in Luopao Mountain for a short time, and Dao Lin soon followed Wei Bo to Shanjun Mansion to discuss the process of the ceremony. Among them, Li Ho took time to go to Luopao Mountain's account room, and Wei Wenlong was so excited that he couldn't even speak. Chen Qinglu and Xian Jian left Luopao Mountain together and planned to visit the Autumn Temple, which has no owner so far. Chen Lingjun was very reluctant to leave old and new friends. These days, Jinghao, who couldn't get away with 2 drinks a day, pretended to be reluctant. Jinghao's direct disciple Gao Geng, he Jianxiu by Deng, and the ghost named Yinlu had already gone down the mountain long before them. There are 2 drinks a day, and every time I drink breakfast, Chen Lingjun will not trouble the stupid girl Wanshu. Chen Lingjun sent it all the way to the gate of the mountain, and agreed with Immortal Master Jing that as long as he traveled to Lixiazu in the future, he would definitely be the first to visit Qinggong Mountain. He gave Chen Julio a package, saying that there were some cakes from the New Year's shop, dried creek fish that were dried by himself, as well as tea leaves from Huanghu Mountain, honey from Xianchao Mountain, etc., and they could be eaten on the road. Then use your heart and heart to Chen Julio, and stop saying a few yin and yang sarcastic words on Jing Lao Shengshan's side. They are just big-hearted, and they are too lazy to care about you, so don't put your nose on your face. Chen Qinglu just slung the polite and affectionate package across his body, and left without talking nonsense to Chen Lingjun. The boy in Xing Yi, who was so angry that he had prepared the polite words like, "Send you 1,000 miles and say goodbye," endured and finally couldn't hold back, took 2 steps in 3 steps, jumped up, and kicked Chen Qinglius with 1 kick. Swearing, "Your uncle." Jing Hao pretended not to see anything, but her eyelids were trembling. A few backs, farther and farther. Chen Zhuliu suddenly raised his arm and shook it a few times. Chen Lingjun was content with this, and moved to squat beside the Taoist priest Xianwei. Xianwei, who was sitting on a bamboo chair basking in the sun, couldn't help but ask, "Jingqing, have you ever been to the Confucian temple?" Chen Lingjun was stunned for a moment, and said doubtfully, "On Luopa Mountain, only my master has been to the Zhongta Confucian temple." "What kind of onion am I, and where should I go?" "If you go, you can enter." Instead, Xianwei was fooled by Chen Lingjun's words, and felt helpless. "I didn't mention the Zhongta Confucian temple, it is the kind of county Confucian temple that can be seen everywhere. According to the Haoran ritual system, every county in Zhozhou has a Confucian temple." Chen Lingjun looked pitiful, raised his hand and patted the Taoist priest Xianwei on the shoulder, reading stupidly. "Aren't you talking nonsense? The royal river in Huangtinghua has so many Confucian temples along the way, can I have not been there?" Xianwei became more and more puzzled. Since he had been there, why couldn't he recognize those scholars? In addition to some small county Confucian temples in barren and remote places, ordinary county Confucian temples, or slightly more affluent county Confucian temples, hanging statues of the 10 philosophers of Confucian temples will be hung together. Chen Ling was a little guilty and ashamed to say it. He really didn't go to the Confucian temple very much, but of course he did. You have to worship the mountain when you enter the mountain, and you have to worship the water house when you enter the water, you know? To burn incense in the temple, the most important thing is to be sincere. Spirit. Every time I go to the Confucian temple, I worship the incense first, and then go to the main hall to worship the hanging statue. Outside the door, I stare hard at the hanging statue of the most holy teacher. Just give him a bang 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 kowtow. In Chen Lingjun's opinion, this is called worshipping the biggest mountain. For example, when you arrive at Beiju Luzhou, as long as you have that blessing, you have to have a good relationship with the real fire dragon who eats all black and white. Another example is when you arrive at Luxiazu, you have to the first one to visit Qinggong Mountain is close to the immortal Jing Lao, who is highly respected and broad-minded. After telling Chen Lingjun this, Xianwei understood it, and he was convinced that it was indeed something Chen Lingjun could do. Xianwei looked at the boy in Xing Yi with a look of pity, and patted the other side's shoulder. "Fellow Daoist Jingqing, you really don't take the usual path." Chen Lingjun laughed. "It's all precious Jianghu experience that can't be bought by $1,000. You have to learn it." The date of returning home kept being postponed, and Gao Jun, the head of the Hushan faction, was finally willing to leave Luopao Mountain and Piyun Mountain, and she took the lead in returning to Lotus Root Blessed Land. Zhong Qian was 2 days later than Gao Jun, and was reluctant to return to her hometown. This unambitious golden martial artist, if not for the status of the first person in the Blessed Land martial arts, would probably only stay in Jiaisfeng. In the private house, I continued to dip green onions in sauce every day, drink some wine, read a few miscellaneous books borrowed from Brother Dafeng and Daoist Xianwei. When it was time to eat, I went to Zhu Lian to wait and help bring the dishes to the table. After eating, I helped the girl in the pink skirt to clean up the tableware, and finally ordered a few dishes with the old cook. The next meal will have something to look forward to. One day, from Nujiadu, a visitor came straight to Luopao Mountain. The white-haired boy is haunted by ghosts, and she, the genealogist, should be as conscientious as the ear-rewarding of millet grains. Among the visitors, finally came a 5-level Qi practitioner. It was Xing Yi, the head of the Wudao school of Shujian Lake, who took a ferry from the capital of Dali to this place. Xing Yi declined the lead of the genealogist and walked to the Jiaisfeng bamboo house by himself. Chen Pingan asked with a smile, "Have you been to the capital of Dali?" Xing Yi nodded, hesitating to speak. Chen Pingan said, "Have you seen her?" For no reason, Xing Yi burst into tears all of a sudden. Chen Pingan was silent for a moment. He really didn't know how to solve Xing Yi, so he could only say, "Go to Zhu Lian's side and sit down when you have time. You can talk to him about this." Xing Yi packed up his mind and chatted with Mr. Chen about the Five Islands faction. Chen Pingan listened carefully and gave some suggestions for Xing Yi to pay attention to. After that, Nuan Shu came here and stood far away on the side of the Bluestone Road. She didn't bother the master of the mountain and the head of Xing to talk about business. After the conversation was over, she walked over to the stone table and took sect master Xing to the mountain residence. At the door of the house, Xing Yi took the key, thanked Nuan Shu, entered the house, put away his luggage, hesitated for a while, and went straight to Mr. Zhu, who was the chief butler in Luopao Mountain. The door of the old cook's house has always been open and closed, and anyone can come to visit. Zhu Lian was lying on the rattan chair, shaking the fan, sitting up, and said with a smile, "Sect Master Xing, it's a pleasure to meet you." Xing Yi said, "Zenji of the Five Islands School, I have met Mr. Zhu Lao." Zhu Lian held the palm fan and shook it. "My family, don't be polite, sit down and talk." The young man used to be a helper in the accounting room for his son in Qingsha Island. Xing Yi sat on a bamboo chair under the eaves and told an old story from many years ago. The beginning of the story was that a young man was brought to Qingsha Island by a benefactor named Zhang Yu, and he saw Mr. Qin, who was haggard but had bright eyes. He was wearing a cotton robe and had a mild air. Xing Yi also talked about how the young man was afraid of Gu Kan. At the beginning of this landscape story, it had nothing to do with wine. After that, there was Mr. Qin who lived next door. The timid and cowardly young man gradually became relieved. He met some people and affairs, ghosts and debts, which were related to Shujian Lake but were very unfamiliar with Shujian Lake. In Zenji, he was about to talk with the girl from Huangli Mountain. Zhu Lian stood up and said to wait a moment. He went to the wine cellar to get a pot of wine, took off the mud seal, and handed it to Zenji. Zenji drank it. "Wine? I don't know if it's people drinking or people drinking wine." I continue to tell the story. "I have been talking about myself going to the capital of Dali, and about the reunion under the big sun. There is a girl squatting and reading a book. In the story in the book, there is a timid young man named Xing Yi, and there is a girl Su who may never like Xing Yi at the end of the story, or know that Xing Yi likes herself, or who may know but pretend not to know." At the end of the drink, the jug was empty, and Xing Yi still raised his head to drink there. Zhu Lian shook the fan and said softly, "The young man originally thought that in his life, if he wanted to meet the girl he loves again, he would need to find her and wait for her for 100 years, hundreds of years, and 1,000 years. I like it. But the world is so strange, it seems like a dream come true. I finally found the girl I like. Logically speaking, this is such a rare lucky thing. I should be very lucky, but I began to worry about gains and losses, but I have to say sadness. It doesn't seem to be heartbreaking. I think it must not be like this. How can it be so unsatisfactory? It shouldn't be like this. This kind of taste is not bitter, but astringent. Forget about Miss Su completely, and turn to like the current Miss Liu. I feel sorry for the former. I have been in love with Miss Su for a long time, and at the same time I like Miss Liu, and I feel sorry for the latter. Just because deep down in your heart, you have to admit that they are not alone after all. Whoever I like, who I don't like, who I like at the same time, I don't like anymore. It seems that no matter what you do, it's always a mistake. It's not the kind of person who likes to pretend to be confused. Since we know it's wrong, how can we really rest our hearts? Zhu Lian smiled and asked, Zenji, if you had known that this was so frustrating, would you regret meeting Miss Su back then? Would you regret going to the capital of Dali this time? The former youth Xing Yi, now the head of the Wudao sect, shook his head vigorously without hesitation, absolutely not. Zhu Lian nodded, at least I can rest assured when I see it. As for some new regrets, just keep them in my heart for a long time. Zenji, if you ask me here, don't you mean nothing? Do you? Then I'm going to ask you a question in return, are you really doing nothing? Listen to me, go back to the capital again, and the affairs of the Wudao faction will be put on hold for a year or 2 or 3 years. When you arrive in the capital, the only thing you have to do is to force yourself not to do anything, so as not to make mistakes, otherwise people's hearts will be difficult to deal with. Find a way of living for ordinary people over there, maybe one day the answer, just run to your heart, is gone. Xing Yi nodded and said in a hoarse voice, I listened to Mr. Zhu, so I will do it like this. After hearing Mr. Zhu say so much, Xing Yi felt much better. Zhu Lian smiled and said, finally, I'll send you a message, don't place high expectations on love between men and women, and don't have no hope in your heart. Xing Yi grinned, I remember. In fact, Chen Pingan had been secretly standing outside the door, listening with perverted ears, and when he heard this, he left quietly. There was a girl in a pink skirt in the distance. Chen Pingan raised his finger to his mouth, then smiled and nodded with her, and Wanshu bestowed 1,000 blessings, walked lightly, and went to work elsewhere. After taking a trip to the Fengyuan ferry on the southeast trade route of Beiju-Luzhou, in the twilight of this day, it slowly docked at Nujiadu. Chen Pingan took Xiaomi Mi and Chen Lingjun to wait here for a long time. While waiting, the little girl in black borrowed a golden pole to the boy in blue, and competed in swordsmanship over there. Yes, it's a pleasure. Jia Xing, who was honored by the local people as Jia Lao Xinxian, or Jia Banxian, walked behind Zhang Lu Changming, who was temporarily serving as the ferry's chief steward. Previously on the ferry deck, the blind old Taoist gave a strong sniff, hee. It is as if the mountain wind in my hometown carries the fragrance of wine. It's been a long time since I had a heart-to-heart chat with Brother Jingqing, and the old Taoist was exhausted. Chen Pingan wrapped his arms around his sleeves and said with a smile, it's all hard work. The patriarch of Luopao Mountain, who was wearing a snow-white robe, gave 1,000 blessings. Her voice was soft, and she called out, Master. In fact, according to Chen Pingan's original idea, this long-lived Taoist friend whom she met in the old deaf children's prison could serve as the accountant of Luopao Mountain. But later Cui Dongshan became the patriarch of the law. After returning home, Chen Pingan asked Pei Qian privately what her impression of Zhang Lu Chongxing was. Pei Qian told the truth, first said some good words to pave the way, and finally came up with a sentence, which was very intimidating after watching it for a long time. Chen Pingan was relieved. It seems that longevity is the best choice, there is no one. Chen Pingan smiled and said, the new steward of this Fengyuan ferry will be replaced by an old sword repairer named Xing Yun, who is the new enshrined of Qingping Zhenzong. The identity of the old immortal Jiao remains unchanged, and he is still the second steward. As for the ferry, of course, it still belongs to our upper sect. Longevity, as the founder of the sect, you are running the ferry business year-round, as sect master Cui said, it is indeed a bit outrageous. Generally speaking, it is more than enough for a cross-continental ferry to have a Jade Pure Realm cultivator in charge. What's more, Xing Yun is also a sword cultivator of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Chen Pingan talked to Jia Xing again. A new Yuhai Academy was built by Qingping Zhenzong. Millet grains held a green bamboo stick in their arms and stopped to applaud silently. Chen Lingjun, who was helping to carry the golden pole, was a little confused. Both Big White Goose and Master Zhong received money from Brother Jia. Otherwise, your academy is not a wine table. Brother Jia, can you go there and talk about a hammer? Chen Pingon smiled and said, everything in the world is well informed about knowledge, and the practice of human feelings is an article. Sect Master Chui and Master Chong agree with the knowledge outside of the book, and I will help you agree to this. What? Immortal Jia panicked for a while, but Pindao has always been outspoken and quick-witted, and he can't be a smooth person. How can he deserve this praise? Chen Pingon wrapped his arms around his sleeves and smiled without saying a word. Chen Lingjun rolled his eyes. The grains of millet scratched their cheeks. Old Immortal Jia stomped his feet in annoyance, looked at it, and said something wrong again, didn't he? If you look down on your own conduct, how can you look down on the vision and love of Sect Master Chui and Master Chong? Chen Pingon explained, if Chui Dongshan might make a joke with you, you know very well who Master Chong is. Outsiders are teaching in the academy, and Chong Chiu doesn't nod, so Chui Dongshan can't just stuff people inside. As for the specific teaching content, then Fengyuan ferry south to Tongya continent, arrived at Yulindu, Jiao Lao Shenxian went to chat with Master Zhong. Jia Xing rubbed his hands together and said, bite the scalp and try it out. If you don't match your morals, you won't be able to take up the position of a lecturer. You don't need to be a master to drive people out. Poor Daoist will get out of the way. Changming asked, Master, I heard that the 5 mountains will be sealed soon, do we need to prepare gifts here? For the big happy events on the mountains such as Wuyue Fengjing, as a rule, the sects and Daxian mansion in Izhou need to congratulate them. He said that it is usually a letter written by the suzerain and the head, and then prepare a copy that matches the status of the mountain. Congratulations. Chen Pingon said, except for Jin Qing and Fan Junmao, on the other side of the other mountain lords, we won't put our hot face on our cold in Luo Pao mountain. The old fairy Jia immediately heard the meaning and chewed his head. Zhang Lu Changming smiled and said, we met a few high-ranking people at Beiju Luzhou before, and Director Jia chatted with them, and the answers were fluent and very decent. Jiao Lao Shenxian said with a face, drinking is a mistake, you can't keep your mouth shut, drinking is a mistake. Chen Lingjun slapped Jia Xing's arm with a slap, Brother Jia, it's all right, you've done a great job again. Who doesn't know, Zhang Lu long life is not easy to boast. Jia Xing reluctantly said, it doesn't count, not to mention what kind of feats it is, but now that I think about it, I have lingering fears, and I am afraid. Oh no. In officialdom, it's the same up and down the mountain. I'm afraid that it's a mistake not to say or not to do it, but I'm even more afraid that it's a mistake to say something wrong and do something wrong. Chen Lingjun laughed and said, what are you afraid of, as long as you are at the wine table, Brother Jia, you and that Lu Jiuxian are invincible. Jia Xing's head froze for a while. How dare you compare with Lu Jianxian? Chen Pingon asked curiously, oh. How to say it, who you met, and what you talked about, let's talk about it carefully. Longevity explained the detailed process of the wine bureau. Chen Pingon listened attentively. It turned out that at a Xianjia ferry in Beiju Luzhou, the old Jia accompanied Zhang Lu for a long life, and negotiated a business with the local Xianfu. There was a restaurant nearby, which happened to sell a kind of wine called Shuangchuan wine. The ferry brewer knew that Jia Sheng was good at wine, and he negotiated the business again. Zhang Lu Chongqing naturally had no objection. As a result, he happened to meet a group of people and had already sat down for a drink in the restaurant. Zhou Chunru Chen's old man, there are 2 more clear-looking old men in Confucian shirts, and a dull old man who looks like a servant. The 2 familiar faces among them were Pang Chao, a wooden guest from Luoyang who had visited Qilong Lane in the town, and Qin Budo, a female cultivator. Qin Budo was bold and took the initiative to invite Zhang Lu Changming and Jia Xing to drink together. The three old gentlemen looked like one rich, one expensive and one poor. Among them, Huang Jinshu claimed to be a lecturer at Shushui Jitai Academy. There is also an old master named Xing Xinshu, who said that he used to be a scholar in a small country, and now he is unofficial and light, so he travels with two old friends who rarely get a break. The last one, named Fan Qing, doesn't like talking much. At first, Jia Sheng was still a little restrained, but after drinking the wine, a few glasses of mellow and fragrant mountain fairy brewed his stomach, and his courage was immediately enough. Although the old Taoist was very measured, he would never dare to get drunk, but that kind of slightly intoxicated state, it's amazing. In addition, Huang Jinshu is quite talkative, and his ability to toast and persuade is not low. After going back and forth, Jia Lao Shinxian will open the chatterbox. This went all the way to Luopeishan, Chen Shanju, morality and knowledge. The words of Jiao Lao Shinxian seem to have no taboos, but in fact they are all just right. When Huang Jinshu, who was most attached to drinking like drinking water, talked about Mr. Nanfeng, Jia Xing drank it all in one go, and said, Nanfeng's article is unique in the world, and the river of water is the battle of stars. Zhang Lu Changming was keen to find that the old master named Xing Xinshu heard this and shook his head with a smile. Huang Jinshu asked with a smile, that young mountain master, who praised such popular articles as Daoshan Pavilion and The Story of Machi. This old master seemed to have been waiting for the blind Taoist priest at the wine table, and said those words of praise that were old-fashioned and conclusive. Jia Xing laughed and shook his head again and again. The reason why my mountain owner respects Mr. Nanfeng so much is not only because of the strict words, but the arrangement in the article. There are thousands of famous articles, shining like stars, and Mr. Nanfeng is nothing more than one of them. Articles such as Daoshan Pavilion and Ink Chi Ji are of course excellent, but they are only a that's it. The most sincere admiration of our mountain masters is not in some of Mr. Nanfeng's handed-down masterpieces, how beautifully written, but in the old master's articles of mixed praise and criticism, such as Yuezhou Zhaogong's Disaster Relief Record and Yihuang County Shui Ji are the most recognized. In addition, Mr. Nanfeng's words and deeds are consistent. He can apply what he has learned, pay attention to economic affairs, and truly care about the suffering of the people, and never talk about it on paper. To be honest, our mountain the Lord likes to copy books, and excerpts as you read and write, but the entire article is copied. Jiao Lao Shinxian put down the wine glass, stretched out his two hands, and turned it over again, at most 20 articles. In terms of the number, Mr. Nanfeng is the leader, and one person has as many as 4. Just ask how many beautiful texts are in the world, and the sea of books is boundless. It's like picking 20 liju. Is it an easy task? What the old Taoist said is true. The mountain owner Chen Pingon really highly respects Mr. Nanfeng. But to say that he told Jia Xing these flattering words is really not that exaggerated. It is far less exaggerated than what the old Taoist said. At that time, it was only a certain time when Jia Xing and Jia Xing sat in the courtyard of the old cook and chatted while eating melon seeds. Chen Pingan's words were still very simple. Zhu Lian agreed a few words, but as a result, the old fairy Jia moved the books to the wine table. Of course, my mountain master also said that this is just his family's opinions and personal preferences. Those leisure-like articles have a certain relationship with those who have not been selected, whether they are good or bad, high or low, but not absolutely related. After all, everyone has their own aesthetics and interests. Scholar, just swearing at people, is it interesting? Interesting. Is it meaningful? Pindao thinks it may not be there. Good learning is not only destructive in the world, but also needs to have the ability to repair and build. If it is knocked down, it has to be rebuilt. You can't pat your and leave. Let's put it aside. Since scholars use their words to convey the truth and pass it on from generation to generation, how can the real gain and loss of the article only be in the literary talent, and how can it not be related to the control of chaos? Being able to ask questions is great. Being able to solve them is even better. Huang Zhenchu and Xing Xinchu, two old gentlemen, looked at each other and smiled knowingly. They unanimously turned their eyes towards the silent old man with an expressionless face. Is it quite a bit of the style of that Wen Xing who reasoned lectured with you, Xiao Gong? Likes and is good at insisting on a progressive, interlocking, not easily denied, but not easily recognized, the real good, often in a higher place. The poor man is rudimentary and has little knowledge. Originally, he was no different from ordinary people. He was only in admiration for Xing Wending's wonderful writing skills. After chatting with the mountain master, I felt that this master is the most famous writer in history. Different things is the most powerful place. Shanzhu said that in dealing with people, you need to see the wise and think well, but also to be out of the way. Not only should you not be vulgar, but also unique and elegant. To be able to not say weird things, behave absurdly, and not deliberately use strange style and obscure content to be fascinating, but also be different, it is difficult to reach the sky. Pang Chao had given this blind old Taoist a series of sincere rhetoric for a long time, and he was completely stunned. Before drinking, he was still a little restrained, and he behaved kindly and politely. He never thought that after the old Taoist drank, it was simply like a divine help. Pang Chao didn't read much, but Qin Budo, who was from the same hometown as Bai and lived in the same era, knew the weight of these compliments. To put it simply, if the old Taoist didn't talk nonsense, it meant that in Qin Pingan's mind, the unmasked Mr. Nan Feng was completely comparable to Bai Yi and Haoran Suzy, the most proud of the world. Even more than that. When it comes to cramming, the old Taoist can never say such a rush article. Huang Zhenchu asked with a smile in his heart, this Taoist priest has already recognized our identity. Qin Budo is not sure. There are many miraculous things on the mountain. The dumbest old master shook his head lightly, giving the answer. Xing Xinchu asked with a smile, dare to ask Dao Changjia, what do you think about the writing of the proud students under Su Ximen? For example, Huang in Su Huang. Jia Xing hesitated for a moment, then drank all the wine in the glass, drinking to strengthen his courage. We Luo Baishan have always been heart-to-heart and treat people with sincerity. The talented Mr. Huang can drink happily and talk about life with him, but he cannot discuss trivial matters in the world with him. A piece of silk can be exchanged for several meat buns, and a few caddies of charcoal can be exchanged for a piece of silk. This is called the rich family sleeps in the mountains at night, mistaken the stream for the sound of rain. My mountain master likes the sentence, 10 years of rain in the rivers and lakes in the night, a glass of wine in the spring breeze of peach and plum. I like it so much that I can drink a whole pot of wine by myself as long as I think of such a poem. The wind is cool in the afternoon, Chen Shanju, who dislikes him so much that he almost never wants to talk behind his back, drinks in anguish, and repeatedly asks himself how that old master can write such heartless poems. When the old Taoist said this, he sighed softly, poured himself a glass of wine, and held it up high, as a salutary apology to the sages from the distance. There are many offenses, don't blame the sages. Xing Xinchu laughed loudly, while Huang Zhenchu nodded with a smile. If you hit the point, you have to pinch your nose to recognize it. Qin Budo and Pang Chao found it even more interesting. A young man is famous, his emotions and anger are hidden, and he has made great achievements in becoming famous. With such a shrewdness and such a skill, he is mostly a hero, a sage, and a big trader. If today's meal is just to listen to the blind Taoist priest say some good words, even if it is true and sincere, it is still not very meaningful. Hearing this, Chen Pingan had already guessed the identities of the two old masters. Mr. Xing Wending, Mr. Nan Feng. Mr. Chongha under Su Ximen. Chen Pingan asked, the last old gentleman, how did others call him? Changming smiled and said, I call him Duke Xiao. From the beginning to the end, I never talked to Jia Xing. Chen Pingan was speechless for a while. The old master's real name was more than that. He has profound knowledge and great skill, especially proficient in 3 graves and 5 scriptures, astronomical calendar and Halua prophecy. It is not only an official school respected by various countries, but also a prominent school within the Confucian Taoism. Although he is known in the world for his rigorous scholarship and can be regarded as a scholar of Confucianism, he is simple in words and extremely poor in words. If students and disciples have doubts, they usually ask their masters for advice by writing, and the old master will also answer in writing. This is also an interesting anecdote within Confucianism. But for some reason, this person was not worthy of the Confucian temple. There are even more rumors that this person once closed the door and sat opposite an old scholar who visited the door. In the end, the old scholar gave a thumbs up and complimented the other party with a well-written word. It is reasonable to say that such secret matters, which are only known by heaven and earth know you and I know, will never be shared, at least they will never be shared with the disciples. But within the entire Confucian school, it is said that there are noses and eyes. How is Xiao Gong's face flushed, and how old Xiao is the old god, who won this tough battle between chatting and laughing. Chen Pingan also knew that when Yu, the deputy head of the Tongis Hao Tianmu Academy, was this person's anonymous disciple, both a teacher and a friend. Immortal Jia arrived at the wine bureau and said a few words of his own opinions. For example, scholars of an era have academics of their own era. If they enter the fence, they are full of limitations. If anyone can predict the trend of the cultural context in the next 1,000 years, is the first-class scholar in the world, who can enter the pre-stream of the source. The word Prilu was originally a Buddhist language, and the 2 old masters looked at each other and smiled. This was the first time they had heard this explanation. As for the unsmiling little old man, although he looked poor and sour, Jia Sheng was at the wine table and toasted with him a few more times, intentionally or not. Wait until Luo Peishan Zhanglu and Jiao Laoxian leave. Mr. Nanfeng twitched his beard and smiled. I didn't expect to be so admired by Lord Qin Shanzhu. There is nothing more fortunate in life than being in a foreign land and having to meet a confidant. Instead of listening to a few good words, but in the lifelong efforts that have never been understood by others, they can be truly recognized and cherished by others. When it comes to the heart, it is like drinking alcohol. The dumb old man who was just drinking and showing no expression from beginning to end stood up and walked to the window. On the side of Nujiadu, Jiao Lao Shinxian asked cautiously, Shanzhu, is there something inappropriate in the poor way? Chen Pingan smiled and said, Chen Lingjun is right, the immortal Jia is invincible on the wine table. Sort of Coming Chapter 1175. Chapter 1175 Daoists don't talk in the corridor under the eaves of the first floor of the bamboo building. Muanshu is busy with needlework, and the millet is chirping, talking about the Qingping sword sect of the big white goose, which official hats are there now. Just read the scriptures on a daily basis, read history on a soft day, write on bamboo and draw orchids when you are angry, and read the collection of masters in the spring breeze. Chen Pingan was looking through the books of the military family. The first batch of books sent to Beidasheng was actually prepared on Jiaisfeng's side. 500 grain rain money will be available soon. Shanzhong Jianfang has just received a secret letter from Tongyin Ferry. On the basis of the original 6 divisions and 8 bureaus, Sect Master Chui has added several branch offices under the Operation Division and Merits Division. There are not many people, but it is not much more than Luo Pao Mountain. Brand new official offices have sprung up like mushrooms after a rain. Judging from the posture, they are rushing to the 24 offices of the official residence of Yueshanjin and Dada Gongho. It is estimated that the final number is only a lot more. Oh, as expected, it's still my unfortunate mountain, which is more breezy and upright. Today, the boy in Zhu, who came to Luopao Mountain to order Mao painting and detain, as the second leader of the self-proclaimed Suzhou City God Temple, it has given itself a name and a Taoist title of Zhiqing, mainly in Pei Zongrua. The Lord and the deputy helmsman Zhou have been with each other for a long time, and they have always felt that treating people with sincerity is the best way to say it. Not long ago, it was handpicked by Lord Qin Shan, and it was promoted to the chief protector of Qilong Lane. As for the white-flowered snake that has no credit and hard work, she has now made it, hey, as long as you follow the right person in the officialdom, you can get twice the result with half the effort. Her name, Bai Hong, was actually picked up by the boy in Zhu-Yi's hand. At that time, Master Qin Shan said the truth of the sages and sages in the book, but he didn't quite understand it. The white flower snake, who was successful and unable to speak, can be said to be very grateful. Bai Hong became her real name of the demon clan. After that, Chen Pingon wished her success in the form, and a middle-aged Taoist priest next to him who looked at the immortal style was also very supportive. Calling himself Chunyang Lu Yen, and also said some festive auspicious words. As a result, as soon as the white snake returned to Chiduan Mountain, it successfully retreated on the same day. When it reappeared, it was already a slim woman. The snow-white snake was transformed into a robe by her. The key is that between her eyebrows, there is also a mysterious Dao mark that a mortal baby was born with from his mother's womb. Sensing the vision of the landscape, Song Yuzhang, the mountain who was transferred from Jiaisfeng Mountain to Chiduan Mountain, is almost never greeted in Beiyu's landscape world. The old mountain who walked out of the temple with a golden body, and actually went to the door to congratulate her, calling her fellow Daoist Bai Hong. The boy in Zhu-Yi sat on top of Zhou's deputy helmsman's golden pole and whispered, "Shanzhu, Bai Hong is thin-skinned and said that she must save a gift as soon as possible, so that she can come back here with the face, and kowtow to the mountain owner and thank you." Now, the incense little man of the Qinghuang Temple in Chuzhou has been riding over the mountains and mountains to order Mao, and then he has been replaced by a green snake to ride. Chen Pingon smiled and said, "You turn around and tell Daoist Bai Hong, you don't need to spend so much trouble, you can come here often with you if you have time, and if you encounter a cultivation barrier in the future, you will find someone on the side of Luopa Mountain. Let her just ask anyone casually, and after listening to it, she feels that she still can't understand it, so she will ask a few more people. The practice question is a big deal, and it's not good to be too thin." The boy in Zhu-Yi asked tentatively, "Lord Mountain Master, why don't I replace Bai Hong and kowtow to you first?" Chen Pingon waved his hand and said helplessly. The boy in Zhu-Yi said carefully, "When will the Lord of the Mountain be free to go to the state city? I am familiar with the road and know the way. I will let the Lord of the Mountain lead the way." Don't look at the fact that it is a high-ranking bachelor to Gao Ping, the Lord of the City God. In his heart, it is always towards this master of his own. Then I thought that I could invite Qin Shanzhu to visit the temple of the city god, and it would be really bright. Then there is this guy Gao Ping, who is too good at being an official. He doesn't understand the world at all. Every time he tells him the etiquette and attention to these landscapes and officials, Gao Ping not only doesn't appreciate it, he wants to save face and suffer the crime, but instead he says that the emperor is not anxious eunuch. This kind of taboo words can be said nonsense by a city like you. Chen Pingon smiled and said, "It's hard to say the exact date for now, but don't worry, as long as I go to Zhouqing, I will definitely go to the Zhouqing temple to burn incense. I heard that your house's temple of wealth is very spiritual, and it is one of the best in the entire Beiyue boundary. Must go." The boy in Zhu-Yi was very happy, but soon became a little sad, and there was a hint of sadness in his eyebrows, and he was afraid that he would make an assertion. Many wise people who have been resolved in the previous life, as long as the opportunity comes in this life, Once they are enlightened, they can practice again, and they climb the mountain very quickly, and the practice goes smoothly all the way, if they are protected by gods. Lin Feijing was a native of the old Qianzhou of the Baishuang dynasty in the south. He was born in a local county, and has been a small Taoist temple. Weibo has checked the archives of the Dali ritual department, and there is no problem with his life experience and character. This man has a firm mind, but his cultivation aptitude is average. He is in his 60s, and he is only a cheap practitioner in the cave state. Because he was delayed by the war, he has no Taoist name. Lin Feijing came from the south of one continent this time. I traveled all the way to the north of Dali, and my original intention was to ask Qin Shanzhu to teach Taoism, but when I got here, I found that Luopao Mountain was not welcoming. Because I couldn't see Qin Pingan, I had to stop at the gate of the mountain. Lin Feijing was unwilling to do so. After returning home, I often drink tea at the gate of the mountain, thinking that it is not appropriate for me to forcibly climb the mountain, and Shanzhu Qin always has to go down the mountain, and as a result, he was cut off by the janitor Xian Wei. After chatting about some things, Xian Wei persuaded, Feijing, if it's all right, then go back. As for helping you find a job in Huaihuang County, I have been talking to Daoist Jingqi not long ago. I said that. The other party patted his chest and promised that he will help you implement it in the near future, so you can rest assured. Lin Feijing nodded. Master can tell that immortal Master Jingqin clearly that in this business, you don't need to worry about salary. The disciple just feels that he has found a place to live and can earn a little money, and he doesn't need to spend money every day, so he can feel more at ease. I heard that the immortal Master Jing Qing from Luopao Mountain is an old immortal in the nascent soul realm who has returned to the original state. Xian Wei complained, what is this? What is the relationship between the teacher and the Daoist Jing Qing? How can the monthly salary be low? Chen Lingjun was really interested in this matter, but on the side of Qilong Lane, Shi Rao's New Year's shop, the contemporary shopkeeper, only sold cakes. Only earn a few taels. But let Lin Feijing go to the Chaotu shop next door. First, he didn't see Brother Jia before, and secondly, the business of the shop was normal, and the small shop had Zhao Dengao and Tian Jiuer, so Chen Lingjun was really embarrassed. At the beginning, I wondered if I was secretly advancing the money myself, and I had a discussion with Wei Wenlong and Zhang Jiazhen from the accountant, and I asked them to do a little favor. Every month, I would pay Lin Feijing a salary in the name of Luopa Mountain. It was nothing more than every month. Chen Lingjun can still spend the expenses of a few snows a month, small money. The gold ingots, yuan bao and copper coins at the bottom of the mountain, and the 3 kinds of immortal coins on the mountain, can they have a big face? This is called heaven and earth, brotherly loyalty, and the greatest face. Just before Fengyuan ferry docked at Nujiadu, Chen Lingjun had a chat with Brother Jia. Brother Jia was forthright, and repeatedly said that there was no problem. The trivial matter of having more bowls and chopsticks in the shop also spared Brother Jingqing from going to the cashier. After a trip, he said that Jia Xing paid the salary of a few snows per month, and now he is enjoying the fortune on the Fengyuan ferry. He holds the title of second steward. Instead, it became difficult. Just let that Lin Feijing go directly to the Chaotu shop, don't be a buddy, lose your share, you have to give the title of the second shopkeeper anyway, it's better, Brother Jingqing, you can help me with a few words to Jiuer and he. Climbing high, let the two of them remember that when they are on Lin Daichang's side, there must be rules for juniors to treat elders, otherwise he, a master, will move out of the master's family. One thing is settled. However, Chen Lingjun hadn't had time to announce the good news to Daoist Xian Wei. Lin Feijing stood up and said goodbye to Master. Xian Wei slowly got up, shook the sleeves of his Taoist robe, and reminded, visiting immortals to cultivate Taoism, refining qi and breathing, focusing on sincerity, calm and clear qi, so you must guard against arrogance and impatience. As for the realm, you can't eat hot tofu in a hurry. Lin Feijing bowed and said, Master is right, my generation of cultivators should place too much importance on realm and give up the bottom line. It is indeed a disciple who is restless. Thank you, Master, for your advice. In terms of eloquence and quick wit, Daoist Xianwei was almost able to deceive Qin Pingan in the capital of Dali. This apprentice is really not bad. With just a few words, the disciple can think of some truths that the master himself could not think of. Xianwei patted Lin Feijing's shoulder. The way of Taoism is natural, you must do things with inaction, and you must sharpen your inaction in doing things. As long as you are calm and stable, you can cultivate the Tao, and the way of heaven rewards your diligence. See the moonlight. Lin Feijing seemed to have come to a realization, and once again thanked Master for this golden and jade speech that was worth chewing over and over again. Xianwei's face was sullen, showing his master's notation, but he was actually relieved, and finally sent the old boy Lin Feijing back. After all, Xianwei, who had accepted his apprentice, had a guilty conscience and never dared to take the initiative to mention this matter with the mountain master. Xianwei even repeatedly told Xiaoli not to worry about telling Shanju Qin about this matter. When the time was right, he would report the matter to Shanju Qin himself. It's just that the Taoist Xianwei's guilty conscience is not the rule of closing the mountain and not entertaining guests and accepting apprentices with caution, but his own whim, worried that he will mislead the children's views on Qin Shan's his side, don't accept it. When he got an apprentice, he lost his iron job as a janitor, causing him to return to his old business. The master and apprentice went to the rivers and lakes together to eat. Luckily, he was just an anonymous disciple who was usually referred to as a Daoist, otherwise Xianwei would really persuade Lin Feijing to return to his hometown to have a look. In name, Xianwei reluctantly accepted Lin Feijing as his disciple when he saw Lin Feijing's zeal. As for the truth, in Xianwei's opinion, Lin Feijing was born in a noble family, and he was a chief practitioner in the middle 5 realms, with a small amount of savings and a good family background. Xianwei is an old Jianghu. In a few words before, he had figured out the details of Lin Feijing. For example, it seemed like a nonsense. Daoist friends have been to several Xianjia ferry crossings, and have been on several Xianjia ferry boats. That is to say, now there is no need to kidnap for the sake of cheating, otherwise the Daoist Xianwei can let Lin Feijing travel north with money, but return home without money. Just like Chen Ping's comment, it can be said in one sentence. It is not an innocent family, and it will not be deceived by Xianwei Daochang. Lin Feijing suddenly stopped and asked, Master Xianwei, who is this? A man in a green shirt and a long coat stepped down from the steps of the mountain road, with a hosta on his head, and his air was gentle. Xianwei turned his head and saw that his head was as big as a dustpan. Why did the mountain master come down the mountain? Fortunately, Lin Feijing was clever and didn't call his master. Qin Pingan smiled and said, My name is Qin Pingan, this fellow Taoist, is Xianwei's friend? Lin Feijing glanced at Xianwei. Xianwei stomped his foot, that's all, stretching his head and shrinking his head was a matter of a knife. He admitted it generously, and then confessed to Qin Pingan, saying that Lin Feijing was his anonymous disciple. Good thing. Qin Pingan nodded and smiled. Since you have the status of master and apprentice, fellow Daoist Lin can live here. As for whether to settle down at the foot of the mountain, or go to the mountain to choose a house, it depends on the arrangement of Daoist Xianwei. Xianwei sighed softly in his heart. He was just a gatekeeper of Luopao Mountain. How could he look like a priest with a seat in Jiasfang Patriarch Hall? For example, it is very likely that there is a soaring platform hidden here. Qi Jingchen, the teacher of the small town school, is the penultimate person in charge of the town. Here is a saint of the 3 religions and a family, a very young scholar of 14 realms. The only true dragon King Zhu in the world, the root of the road is here. As for the younger generation, who went out from the town, such as Chen Pingan in Luopao Mountain, Lu Xianyang in Longquan Jianzong, Ma Kushuan in Xinghua Lane, and Gu Kan in Nipping Lane, there is more news circulating in the outside world. Feng Shuatao said, "This visit to Luopa Mountain, do I need a backup gift? If it is just a pure identity of a soaring realm cultivator, even if Feng Shuatao passes by the Dali dynasty, he only needs to deliberately bypass Luopao Mountain and Piyun Mountain. Since your old Lizidongshan's landscape boundary, in Ruanqiong's hands, make an agreement. Qi practitioners need to hang the sword talisman in the jurisdiction of the wind, so I can't afford it, can I hide? But since I was with Chief Shou this time, I was a guest at Luopao Mountain for the first time. I had to talk about the etiquette on the mountain. The problem was that Feng Shuatao didn't understand the temperament of the young hidden official, and the quality and price of a meeting gift. There is knowledge. As a Yi Xiu, Feng Shuatao is of high age and has a good family background. For example, he has a half-immortal soldier treasure on hand. Feng Shuatao has not made a fool of himself. Of course, he is reluctant to send it out. If there is a magic weapon that cannot be refined for life, or a magic weapon that is not cost-effective to refine, which one should you choose? The same thing is a magic weapon, and the price can be very different. Jiang Shangzhen sat down again, took a pair of chopsticks and stewed bamboo shoots with bacon, and specially picked the spring bamboo shoots called Nili Huang or Huang Nijian in the town, and then used the ham meat that had been dried for 2 or 3 years to stew slowly in a casserole. Jiang Shangzhen chewing carefully, he smiled and said, "I have already helped to prepare the gift, Brother Feng doesn't have to think about these little things." Feng Shuatao shook his head and said, "No, I still have some savings." Jiang Shangzhen smiled and said, "Don't argue with me about this, if it wasn't for my sake, you wouldn't have to go to Luopao Mountain. According to custom, whether it's visiting relatives during the first month of the year, or visiting people to ask for help, you have to send a pair, not a single. So either you don't send the wine at all, you have to send 2 bottles. So I prepared 2 more pleasing magic weapons for you." What's more, Feng Shuatao lost a lot of money during the slaughter in the wild hinterland. Yi Xiu earns money, can he be comparable to the cultivator of genealogy? Although you are Feng Shuatao from Ascension, I am Jiang Shangzhen. Between good friends, it makes sense. Feng Shuatao still insists on his own opinion. Jiang Shangzhen has already raised his glass and drank it all. Stop talking and drink more. The more you go, the more friendship you will have. If you really feel bad in your heart, after you finish drinking the wine in your glass, return the 2 of me. It's settled. Feng Shuatao had to drink 3 glasses of wine in a row, raised his hand and wiped the corners of his mouth. Jiang Shangzhen drank a lot of wine, and added more dishes, and smiled. My alcohol intake is high or low, and the quality of the wine is good or bad. Bad hook. Inviting Feng Shuatao to serve as the enshrinement of Yuguizong, in addition to the mutual affinity of the 2 sides, and being able to urinate in a pot, Jiang Shangzhen certainly has his own selfishness. For example, if you quarrel with others in the Xinzhuan Peak Patriarch Hall in the future, you will have helpers. Jiang Shangzhen finally didn't have to do it alone, and picked the house one by one. I have found a bunch of people, through several Shanshui D newspapers controlled by the Jiang family, and Jiang Shangzhen personally went off the stage, smashed the money of the gods, and used dozens of word-of-mouth transmissions from different sects and fairy houses to help the Taoist Qing secret. Feng Shuatao, in the southern part of Tongya continent, was very publicized, and his fame spread far and wide. This person who was in the mirror on Izhou Mountain and famous for scolding Jiang Shangzhen for being the most vicious and ruthless broke the real monarch. I do not know how to hook up. Qingmi, the old Feishing, is a mountaintop loose immortal from Yiluzi. He has an extreme personality. He likes to play black hands, knock sap, and he will be reported. Killing is a common thing like eating and drinking. Cut grass and root, without leaving the slightest trouble, an immortal mansion targeted by this Ascension Realm cultivator, not to mention male and female monks, even chickens that can lay eggs. The key is that there is no evidence even in the Confucian temple. This time, all Feng Shuetao is willing to make an exception and serve as the named worship of a sect. You ask him what Feng Shuetao is planning. Nonsense, what else can you do? Naturally, it is going to the Huashan mountain in Jiang's blessed land, so the fairies who are on the rouge list should be careful. Don't go out and travel in the near future, be careful of being poisoned. I heard that Yi Xiu, who has no Taoist partner, has illegitimate children in 7 or 8 continents of Haoran. Maybe Jiang Shangjin is one of them. Do you think this is the truth? Poor Feng Shuetao, he hasn't appeared in Jade Guizhong yet, he still doesn't know his reputation, it's already rotten on the street. Generally speaking, it is unanimous to say that the wild father of Jiang Thief came to Tongyi's Hao Yuguizhong to find his son to recognize his relatives. Before coming to Aquarius, Jiang Shangjin carried Feng Shuetao on his back, went to Jade Guizhong, and temporarily initiated the discussion in the Patriarch's Hall. Regarding whether to invite Feng Shuetao to serve as a sect worshipper, there was no objection in the temple of the ancestors of Shenjuan Peak at that time. They may not all feel that it is not a good thing for Feng Shuetao to serve as a worshipper, and they may just be accustomed to disagreeing with Jiang Shangjin. Probably without taking the opportunity to scold Jiang Shangjin, it would not be considered a qualified Shenjuan Peak discussion. Since Feng Zuido's reputation is so bad, why should Yu Guizhong take over such a hot potato? Jiang Shangjin has only one sentence: I almost didn't kneel on the ground begging Feng Shuetao to come to Shenjuan Peak. He is of high realm, and he is an ascension realm that is hard to find even with a lantern in hand. Assuming that Feng Shuetao is really willing to serve as a worshipper, how should the salary of an ascension realm be priced? If it is too high, it will exceed the foreign surname of the rest of the Jade Gizong's foreign surname worship and name Gesh Qing, so what do they think? If it's too low, Feng Shuetao won't have any opinion. He thinks we've lost his face. But don't fall out, there will be more enemies on the mountain for nothing. Feng Shuetao is an ascension realm. Feng Shuetao is a wild cultivator after all. What can he do when he arrives at Jade Guizhong? Do you offer him up as a living ancestor of a flower stand? Feng Shuetao is an ascension realm. The surname is Jiang. If anything happens in the future, for example, Feng Shuetao can't be idle. During the trip down the mountain to play in the mountains, we got into a dispute with Tong Yezhou and accidentally killed someone. You, Jiang Shangjin, are responsible for delivering toilet paper to Feng Shuetao. Wipe thee and sweep the hut. For the trouble of an ascension realm cultivator, are you an immortal realm really responsible? Feng Shuetao is ascension realm. Feng Shuetao is ascension realm. Feng Shuetao is ascension realm. Important things are said 3 times. Being so rogue by Jiang Shangjin, someone in the ancestor hall almost fell off the chair. Jiang Shangjin turned his head to look at the statue of the Zhushitang, his face full of grief and indignation, and began to complain, the ancestors, especially the old man Sun, open your eyes and look at what these people have done, sect master Wei, listen to your ears, listen to how these avenge their personal revenge. When quarreling, there is no taboo in scolding people, and being scolded is not serious. Satisfied, Jiang Shangjin leaned against the back of the chair and asked, it seems that in the history of your snowy continent, there has never been a cultivator of the 14th realm. Feng Shuetao said with a smile, there are no 14 realms in Snow White Island. Compared with the previous drunkard Chao Gingxin, his ability to be an official is 1,000 miles behind. A Longquan County Kiln Supervision and Construction Office, on the bright side, supervises the firing process of those kiln-mouth porcelains that retain the status of official kilns in Longquan. Of course, there is a more important secret responsibility, which is to supervise everything in the former site of Lizidongshan. In fact, After Longquan Jianzong moved to the mountain and moved away from this place, the only thing that the spy of the Supervision and Administration Bureau needed to watch was Luopao Mountain, which was the biggest landlord, is very smart. It is obviously the biggest responsibility of the Supervision and Construction Department, but Chao Geng does not care about it. As a result, he has been the head of the Supervision and Construction Department for 2 terms. Now, as expected of a master who dared to care about Chi Lane and Cheer Street secretly selling pictures albums when he was in his teens. On the other hand, the newly appointed inspector is more resolute. For example, when Jiang Shangjin appeared in the town this time, if Chao Gingxin was in charge of the house, he would definitely turn a blind eye, but today the spy of the inspectorate will be followed all the way, trying to check and confirm the identity of Feng Shuatao next to Chief Zhou, as well as the officials at the government office, who have already sent letters with flying swords, and inquired about the news with several nearby Xianjia ferry crossings, whether there is this person passing by record. Just because the 2 of them used the Sanshan talisman, only in the middle of Aquarius continent, Jiang Shangjin had a routine with the imitation Baiyujing, so the current supervision department has already jumped. If it hadn't been for Zhao Yao, the servant of the Ministry of Punishment, who had previously returned to his hometown and went to the yamen of the superintendent's office, otherwise, according to the behavior of the new superintendent, he would have stabbed the matter to Piyun Mountain. I inquired about this matter with Shanjun Mansion, but in the winding and bumpy landscape officialdom, this is not what accountability is. Chen Pingan smiled and said, the current inspector is called Jian Feng. He likes to admit the truth and does things more seriously. Hearing this comment, Feng Shuatao felt pity for the kiln inspector who was a neighbor of Luopao Mountain. The words in the official circles are either straightforward or slanted. Anyway, there is something in the words, and whether you can understand them or not depends on the talent and experience of the public sect. Jiang Shangjin smiled and did not explain anything to Feng Shuatao. He was personally evaluated by his own mountain master as recognizing the truth and doing things seriously, which can be completely equivalent to the great excellence of the observation. In fact, I talked with Lin Shou before, and the result is good. The realm is high and high. This young immortal in the upper 5 realms actually said that he can't get away from something. Yu Chen Pingan didn't say it sooner. In the reply letter, Master Lin told Chen Pingan to go to the logging yard by himself if he was really in a hurry. It didn't matter if he was there or not. Chen Pingan had to make another appointment with Lin Yupu. It really is the world today. People's hearts are not ancient, and whoever owes money is the uncle. In the middle of the night, Fu Zhou fell in a secluded landscape outside the county where the Logging Institute is located, and walked on foot. Chen Pingan and Ning Ji each took out a road guide and entered the county. As soon as Lin Shou came to the gate of the county town, Chen Pingan threw his hands together and said, Lin Yupu has not seen you for a long time. I am in a panic, which has delayed Lin Yupu's practice. Lin Shou felt helpless. It's really something, and the date has been set a long time ago. Chen Pingan smiled. Yuaning, Yu Yupu, if there is an incident or leave, whoever has the highest level has the final say. Lin Shou laughed and said, You're not done yet, are you? Chen Pingan smiled casually and introduced the students around him. Ning Ji subconsciously shouted, Uncle Lin. Chen Pingan held back his smile. Ning Ji, you're calling it wrong. According to our pedigree, Lin Yupu is the second disciple of your master, and his realm is high, but he is a generation lower than me, so you have to call senior brother Lin. Lin Shi didn't bother with Chen Pingan. He nodded and smiled with the dark and thin teenager. My name is Lin Shi, and your husband is from the same hometown. So just call me Brother Lin. Remember not to imitate your husband who likes to say weird things so much in the future. Ning Ji grinned. Mr. himself, he never said weird things, he always had something to say. Lin Shi laughed heartily. What are you nervous about? Chen Pingan sighed. No wonder you made a mistake in your message. otherwise I would have come to pay New Year's greetings to Uncle Lin earlier. Lin Shui smiled and said, "You just come to the door empty-handed." Chen Pingan said, "How is that possible?" Lin Shui said, "The county town is not big, it's only a few steps away, and my father is already waiting." In fact, his father had already specially asked the kitchen to prepare the meals. He didn't ask Lin Shui why he hadn't arrived yet, or he asked him to go outside to see if he had arrived. Chen Pingan asked, "Will you not disturb Uncle Lin's rest?" Lin Shou smiled and said, "Then you go back, come back next time, choose a day." Chen Pingan's face darkened. "Wait, when I see Uncle Lin, I will find a way to talk about Dong Shui Jing." Lin Shui immediately shut up. At the gate of the logging courtyard, Chen Pingan straightened his clothes and let out a long breath. At that time, the straw shoe boy introduced himself like this: "Hello, my father's surname is Chin, and my mother's surname is also Chin, so, my name is Chen Pingan." Lin Shui didn't go to see Chen Pingan, but just gave the boy a chopstick dish and said with a smile, "Ning Ji, try it." In the territory of Qingling country, the wild creek originating from Tsayu Mountain is surrounded by apricot trees, blooming like snow. This wild stream merges into the largest river in Qingling country. The water transportation is busy, and the official ships come and go. The river is full of real money and silver. The Bamboo Branch School is the first immortal mansion of Qingling Kingdom, and its relationship with the imperial court has always been stable. I had a drink at the same table with Xiahou Zhan and Xiahou Jianxian of Shilongfeng before. As an outdated guest of the Bamboo Branch School, my monthly salary has doubled from 6 snows. After all, he is a pawn, and the Sesame official is also an official. At the end of each year, there is a dividend, but it depends on the operation of the Zhuji faction. Qin Jiu likes to fish at night, and he is willing to pay for his nesting. Cui Yushan likes to joke that if we, Qin Dianke, make a nest, the water level of the entire wild stream can rise by an inch. That night, Uncle Bai found the old one, and the old man watched for a while at the skilled walker of the outer door, and then threw a herring weighing more than 30 kilograms into the big fish basket. After seeing the lively scene, the old man said straight to the point, "Old, I won't go around with you. I suggest you to change to another place, because this kind of thing belongs to Jade Yushin's presumptuous proposition, unilaterally breaking the contract, so the Zhuji faction the accountant will give you a sum of immortal money, you go to withdraw the money tomorrow morning, as for my side, there is no need to say goodbye." Squatting on the edge of the stream, the old man was stunned and stared at the old man for a long time. After he was sure it was not a joke, he became anxious, threw the fishing rod at his feet, got up and said, "Uncle Bai, this is not appropriate, but it is if there is an extra 6 snows a month to spend money on, we are going to drive people away. Are we cutting Yushan so short of money that we can't open the pot? It's okay, the big deal is that I will suffer a bit of a loss. The salary is gone, so as not to make the Xiahou Jianxian face bad, I will spend the extra 6 snows in private, and return them all to Cui Yushan." The old man smiled bitterly and shook his head, "It has nothing to do with this. You don't need to know the reason. It's not bad for you to leave early. Uncle Bai, if you don't care about love anymore, I really want to say, if you don't leave your father here, you will have your own place." Qinzhou said, "To tell the truth without ignoring the conscience, without a young and promising outsider like me, who can work hard and bear no complaints, it's a loss for your Zhuji faction." Bai Ni smiled and said, "That's the best way. I'll tell you later if I regret the green intestines. There will be such a day, and I'll be ashamed to beg you to return to Tsayu Mountain. If the Zhuji faction can get through this difficulty, Bai Ni is really willing to let this outer sect come back to cut Yushan. It's just that things are impermanent, tomorrow's cloudy and sunny, how do you say today? What happened?" Is there some kind of enemy who was unable to cut the grass and rooted in the bamboo branch school, but now has a great identity, and came to the door, clamoring to destroy it? Chinjio said in a low voice, Uncle Bai, I'm not bragging. If it's such a thing, I can come forward and mediate. I'm good at fighting, and I'm good at being reasonable. Bai Ni said with a smile, nonsense. Do you think it is our bamboo branch school on Jingyang Mountain? To be honest, the old man is really reluctant to chase the old away. Not only his white mud, but the old craftsmen who cut Yushan all like this young man who can brag, drink wine, and work carefully. Every time they catch a fish at night, young people often wear aprons to cook, invite the old people to have a drink together in their spare time, and listen to the old stories of stone quarriers and jade pickers. The old and firm said, Uncle Bai, I really put the harsh words here today. If there is no valid reason to convince me, I will not leave. What's the point of working hard, or just thinking about Uncle Bai? Let me introduce you to get a genealogy status in the Zhuji school. Bai Ni smiled and said, Why, they really said that you are poor and poor, but your spirit is high. You think that our head Gua has no Taoist partner? Do you have any ideas? Chinjio was really anxious this time. Fuck your stinky farts. These guys are chewing their tongues like a broken-mouthed bitch, and when I look back, I let them spit out all the wine and vegetables, and they are still thinking about eating fish and drinking, right? Eat and pee. Looking at the scolding young man, the old man patted the old shoulder and said, Listen to the persuasion, let's go. Old and silent, he squatted on the ground again, picked up the fishing rod, grabbed the bait hook, and threw the rod into the water. The old man sat on the side, not willing to say anything serious to the young man, and said with a smile, I don't really know how high the sky is, and think there is a chance for Head Gua to become a Taoist partner, right? Chinjio said helplessly, Even if the head of Gua likes me, I don't like her. The old man smiled and said, Oh. Do you have a girl you like in your heart? Chinjio grinned, Yes, and we'll be married soon. The Zhuji faction is divided into two veins, Tsayu Mountain and Jizu Mountain. Guo Huifeng is from the Chuayu mountain line. Ling Xia, the patriarch of the law, is from Jizu Mountain. The Taoist name is Rain Period. The apprentice of the master of Jizu Mountain. Early the next morning, Bai and I first went to a house at the foot of the mountain. The young man who served as a guest of the outer door still left. The old man was relieved. Then he went to the nearby Tsayu Mountain account, and found that it was outdated. Didn't receive the immortal money that was considered severance pay. The old man laughed and scolded, Stinky boy, he's quite temperamental. If you bump into the old man will inevitably want to teach you a lesson. You are not a godly master with a lot of money. You are a person who is about to marry a wife, so why compete with money? By the wild creek, a storm blew apricot blossoms like flying snow. Bai Ni was walking by the water with an umbrella. He wanted to see apricot blossoms that he didn't know if he could see them again in the future. As the old man walked, he realized that he was looking at the old scenery with his heart, just like the new scenery. The hometown, which was originally opposite each other day and night, was like a stranger who had never met before, and when the wind blew the flowers, it was more like an emaciated beauty with frowning frowns. The old man walked all the way to the junction where the stream joins the Chiha River, and found a black spot on the water's edge. When I got closer, I saw a fisherman wearing a hat, a hood and straw sandals. He looked young and dressed as a Taoist priest. The other party claimed to be a Jianghu person who hit the government and Chongzhou. A penny stumped a heroic man. He had bad luck and a bad fate. Bai Ni casually asked Dao Chong how the fish was caught. The Daoist looked embarrassed and said that it was all right. After the rain, the weather was fine and the fire was lit, and today I can finally have a full meal. He probably guessed that the old man was a genealogical cultivator on the other side of Tsayu Mountain, and seeing that the old man did not intend to leave for a while, and the foreign Taoist monk who went fishing at the gate of someone else's mountain, he was a little uncomfortable in the end. Baianai doesn't mind strangers coming here to fish, not to mention the Chiha River, it's a wild stream. Could it be that whose name is still engraved on the fish in the water? In fact, the old man was not interested in fishing at first, but he was familiar with the way of fishing. Over time, the old man saw some interest in the way of life. Besides, as the old man said many times, watching people fishing is like hearing the sound of books in a dream. It's interesting, not to mention watching people fishing rods, just like drinking wine without spending money, you can pour a piece of lei. According to the custom of the quarriers, if the incense stick is successfully burned, one can enter the mountain to mine inkstone materials. Whipped to death, then drown the body in water. After Jinking's death, his true spirit remained, and he was favored by Zhongyue Laoshenjin of the old Zhuiying dynasty. He first helped Jinqing stabilize his soul, and then arranged a land temple to shape the golden body. After that, he was promoted and promoted continuously. Jinqing finally did when it came to Daizhong Peak Mountain God, who was enshrined by Zhuing Dugas court. When Lao Shanjun suffered an accident and his golden body was broken, Jinqing successfully succeeded the Shanjun and became the lord of Jizi Mountain. After chatting about some anecdotes and trivial matters, Chao Rong asked with a smile, Jin Shanjun, I heard that Wei Shanjun's self-made name is Lingzi. Jinqing nodded and said, if I knew this earlier, I would report to the Ministry of Rites for a night tour divine name. Wei Shanjun is not authentic in his work, so wouldn't he be when he blocks the pit? Chao Rong said, several night tours and banquets in the Zishan mountain have been held very impressively, and the mountain is well known. Jinqing snorted, we all learned from Wei Shanjun. We are all students about how to do the night tour banquet. Chao Rong burst out laughing. The Ho Yanghua of Changchun of Dadu remained silent. She was closing her eyes and resting, with the horizontal sword on her knees, and gently rubbing the string of golden sword spikes in her hand. As a rule, high-ranking gods participated in the discussion, and the Dali court allowed them to wear armor and swords to go to the temple. There are only 3 of them in the house for now. In fact, whether it is Jinqing or Chao Rong, they look at Yanghua, who is in the 2nd rank of the gods. In their hearts, they actually treat her as a little girl who is ignorant of the world. Indeed, Yanghua's qualifications are too shallow, her resume is too thin, and luck is too good. At that time, just because she was the personal maid of the Queen Mother Nanpin, she was able to become the water goddess of the Iron Fu River in the old Longzhou. When the war ended, she went to Dadu to fill the gap. Did she ever do anything practical? What credit? On the other hand, Jinqing, who is the same as Dada Changchun Ho Pin rank, or Chao Rong, whose position is half a rank lower than Yanghua, or even the orthodox mountain gods of the 5 mountains, the mountain of crown princes, is no better than Yang in terms of years and prestige. Stronger flower. Therefore, every time they talk about Yanghua in private, they are very disapproving. As for the female Shanjun Fan Junmao, she is both similar and opposite to Yanghua. The similarity means that the 2 sides have similar Tao age and belong to the new faces of the mountain and water gods in one continent. Especially involving some gray methods of chi practitioners and immortal mansions on the mountain, many gods are not within the framework of arrogance and non-violation. You can communicate with your neighbors and help each other. For example, the mountain is most afraid of the ins and outs, and the opening of a dojo for chi practitioners. If you don't talk about jianghu morality, just focus on the construction of this immortal mansion is tantamount to making a hole in the stretched body of a mountain god, and the water is most afraid of the kind of drought that is rare in 1,000 years and a once in a century. After being exposed to the sun for a long time, the river bed will dry up, and the skin will be cracked like the commonplace in the market. In history, there was a time when the relationship between Zongmin Xianfu and Hu Jun was so bad that there was no room for maneuver. The former did not do anything but joined forces with the imperial courts of several countries, and simply built a seat directly upstream of a series of water source rivers in the Great Lake. A dam was built, and then the river was replaced. In just a few decades, the Great Lake dried up to the bottom, the billions of aquariums died, and the golden body of a lake monarch finally shattered. However, this kind of tragic disaster is still a special case after all. The relationship between more gods and chi practitioners is either sincere cooperation and solidarity, or tied together by interests. No matter how bad it is, they can at least maintain a surface harmony. The gods who can sit here today are all well-deserved frontier officials on the mountain. Although there are 3, 6, 9, etc., which they know in their hearts, any mountain and water gods only need to wait until the discussion is over. They are all earth emperors, in their respective jurisdictions, and they govern a large number of rivers, mountain gods, land, rivers, and city gods at all levels. Generally speaking, within the boundaries of mountains and rivers, as long as there are no sects, these high-ranking gods are more comfortable. When Weibo entered the imperial study, there was no more talk about the excavation of Dadu in Tonggishou in the south. As for the night tour banquet, it was deliberately avoided. Who does not know that in the early years, Wei Shanjun once traveled far to the border between Beiyue and Zhongyue, and fought with Shanjun Jinqing at their doorsteps. However, the relationship between the two Shanjuns has eased over the years. It is rumored that the Shanjunqin personally came forward to help them match them, and he did not hesitate to go to the Zishan mountain in person. Jinqing asked, why didn't Wan worship come? As the chief worshipper of the Dali dynasty, the last suzerain of Longquan sword sect, Wan Qiong logically said that he would not be absent from this important discussion. Wei Bo said, it seems that Lu Zong is the main person who is serving the wine. There is an unwritten rule in the study room of Daliyu, that neither chi practitioners nor mountains and rivers are allowed to speak their minds. It is said that it was the reminder of the national teacher Cui Yu and a greatly Jiu Shanjun in the early years, and it became a custom later. Jin Qing asked, with such a big happy event, Tai Yunshan is not allowed to hold a night banquet to celebrate. After all, the Longquan sword sect is one of the only 2 sects in Beiyue. Lu Xianyang is a close friend of Qin Pingan, and Qin Pingan is your good brother Wei Shanjun. You can hold one. Wei Bo was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. Jin Qing asked, do I have to call you Lingzi in the future? Wei Bo said, we make up our own gods, and if the Confucian temple fails, we will say 2 things. Jin Qing crossed Erlang's legs, patted his boots lightly, and said with a sneer, it's hard to say how many of us are, but you are Wei Shanjun, will the Confucian temple approve it? If you don't give you face, you won't give Qin Shanju face. If you don't give Qin Shanju face, you don't give Wenxing's face, isn't that the truth? Who doesn't know, the real leader of the Confucian temple today is actually an old scholar. Wei Bo smiled and said, I'll tell Wenxing about the truth of Jin Shanjun. Mr. De and several scholars who left Luopao mountain before, seem to have not shown up in other mountains yet. It is very likely that they are inspecting the customs of various places. Jin Qing was deflated and looked at Wei Bo, wanting to determine whether it was serious or joking. If it really reaches Wenxing's ears, it will not be beautiful after all. Meng Rong said in a roundabout way, whether the Confucian temple can pass through our self-made gods, this time I want to thank Wei Shanjun for reminding me, otherwise we would know that there is such a thing. If it hadn't been for Wei Bo to send a letter to the rest of the Shanjun mansion, saying that according to the ancient and old rules of the Confucian temple set by Li Xing himself, the Shanjun of each continent and the Duke of Dadu could make up their own names, otherwise who would dare to think? Among the gods of mountains and rivers, who does not envy Wei Boss connections on the mountain? When Baiyue came to govern the old territory of the Dali dynasty, Piyun Mountain's identity in the landscape officialdom was somewhat similar to that of the prefect of the capital, so it was naturally close to the Song dynasty of Dali. Moreover, Piyun Mountain and Luo Pao Mountain were close neighbors. Chen Pingan, what it means, the gods and immortals of one continent are well aware of it. There is a saying that someone else first put forward: it is enough to regard a Luo Pao mountain as a monk of the 14th realm. It seems that this statement, the more you think about it, the more interesting it is, and the aftertaste is deep. But Fan Junmao just pretended he didn't see Tong Shanjun's gesture. The key was that Tong Wenchang wasn't angry either. Maybe it's brine tofu, one thing falls another thing. Fan Junmao was accompanied by the family of the king of Caiji Mountain, with extraordinary bearing. He wears an imperial crown and a luxurious attire of purple clothes like a simple piece of clothing, and a jewel as large as a green plum is adorned on the crown. No matter how you look at it, Wang's family is more like Yue Shanjun, and Fan Junmao is more like a priest and maid of Shanjun's mansion. Today, among the 5 mountains in Aquarius, only Fan Junmao's Nanyue is out of the jurisdiction of the Dali dynasty. Nanyue was originally a special mountain that was formed by manpower stacking soil and mountains. After the war, it was completely wiped out. Caiji Mountain was able to escape the disaster because it was converted into a Xianjia ferry by the army tent of the demon tribe. Coupled with the fact that Dali Song lost control of the southern part of Aquarius, Caiji Mountain became more and more detached. It can be said that it is under one mountain and above 10,000 mountains. Fan Junmao's seat was just opposite Weibo. She sat sideways, resting her cheeks with one hand, stared blankly at Weibo, and asked with a smile, "Why didn't he come today?" Weibo had a relaxed attitude, crossed Erlang's legs, twisted his wrist slightly, and asked, "How did he come here, and what identity does he use?" "The mountain master of Luo Pao Mountain, the close disciple of Wensheng's lineage. Or the last hidden officer of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Neither is suitable. You Fan Junmao has become a mountain lord, why do you still think about it?" Fan Junmao pretended to be surprised and said, "Isn't there a gossip that he has no intention of being the national teacher of Dali, but it is possible that he will have a position above your Dali court?" Weibo wondered, where did the rumors come from? Fan Junmao said casually, "Where can I find the source of this kind of thing?" Although the two Shanjun chatted, they all used he. But everyone knew that they were talking about Qin Pingan. When Fan Junmao mentioned the word national teacher, the house became quiet for a while, hoping that the two Shanjun could talk more about Qin Pingan. Fan Junmao pouted and stopped the conversation. She just wouldn't let these spectators get their wish. In fact, regarding the matter of Dallas national teacher hanging in the air, the gods here today have their own thoughts. If Cui Yu is still there, then there is no need to think about anything. This embroidered tiger will be the national teacher for a few years, or whoever Cui Yu is willing to let him take over as the national teacher is whoever. In a word of conscience, these gods of mountains and rivers, they are able to have the high position above the brand new golden and jade genealogy in the Confucian temple today, all thanks to Cui Yu. The Dali dynasty did not have a national teacher and embroidered tigers, so how could one country be one continent? Aquarius has no Dali Song clan, and it is estimated that it will not be any better than Tong Yezhou. But having said that, since Cui Yu is no longer the national teacher of Dali, and he has not clearly pointed out the candidates for the national teacher, then there are some landscape gods in the house, and they will feel that the Dali dynasty does not have a national teacher. It doesn't matter, no one is good anyway, as long as he compares with Cui Yu, it's all a joke, and it belongs to oversight, even including a young sword immortal, no matter how many identities he has, he can't be an exception. The most feared situation is when Dali Song pushes into power a new national teacher who is skilled and low-handed. If it is said that these are out of public interest, then there are some out of selfishness, and it is even more reluctant for Dali Song to have a new national teacher who can manage the East and the West. Therefore, I hope that the gods of mountains and rivers, who have always been empty, still occupy the vast majority. For example, some people want to know a certain attitude of Fan Junmao. As the only female Shanjun who is free from the constraints of the Dali Song clan, how does she view the stone tablet at the entrance of the patriarchs of the many immortals in the Nanue realm? Is Fan Junmao willing to help those sects on the mountain and the countries below the mountain to seek justice with Dali Song? Come here today to attend the meeting. Will it be Fan Junmao's decision? On the other side of the door, in charge of the printing of the Legion in a vermilion python suit, reminded softly, "Your Majesty will be here soon, you can stand up to greet you." Almost all the gods of the mountains and rivers in the house stood up one after another, holding their breaths, waiting for the appearance of Emperor Dali. As a result, only Wei Bo, Fan Junmao, and Tong Wenchang were still sitting on the spot, still not moving. When Emperor Song he walked into the imperial study, Wei Bo slowly got up, followed by Fan Junmao, and finally Tong Wenchang with a cigarette stick at his waist. Song he stretched out his hand and pressed it twice. "No need to be polite, everyone, please take a seat." In the Dali court, apart from Emperor Song he, there were only two ministers from the Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of War. The secretary of the Ministry of War was a thin, elderly man with a cane in hand. He sat down tremblingly. After sitting down, he leaned on the crutches with both hands and started to doze off with squinting eyes. This old man named Shin Chen has gone through 3 dynasties. When he was young, he began to move between various ministries and Juqing government offices. He was known for his stubbornness in the court and the opposition. Scholars who go to Guanhu Academy to study without reading in Shanaya Academy will never be able to gain a foothold in my Dalakaitang. All scholars who like to sing poems with officials from neighboring countries such as the Liu dynasty and the Sui dynasty, it is best not to be an official, and continue to make a name for yourself in the literary world. Not the kind of harsh words. Shin Chen did what he said. Just because of Shin Chen's arbitrary conduct, he did not even give the face of the official minister Guan, and as a result, the official government, which originally held great power, was scolded almost every day by the capital and local literati. As a result, the national teacher Cui Yu had a heart-to-heart talk with him. The two sides did not know what they were talking about. Anyway, Shin Chen resigned on the same day. There is an unfounded official statement that he dropped his official hat on the ground at the Nengxinfang office that day. Shin Sherlang, scolding you, your mother, a foreigner Cui Yu. But in the 5 words behind this sentence, some people in the Dali officialdom later said with certainty, and some people swore to say no. It's just that within 2 years, Shin Chen re-entered the court as an official, a civil official who had never touched a knife, but served as a military minister. The Minister of Rights, Zhao Duanjin, was born from the Tianshui Zhao family, one of the surnames of the Shangzhou kingdom. Song he said with a smile, in the later discussion process, Tong Shanjun will do it himself. This humorous opening remarks eased the originally solemn atmosphere a lot. Tong Wenchang nodded, "You're welcome. But if anyone is uncomfortable, I'll go to the outside corridor to smoke cigarettes." Fan Junmao said angrily, "If you want to smoke, go outside to smoke, otherwise you will make the whole room smoky. What a formality." Tong Shanjun, who looks and dresses like an old farmer, has such a wrinkled old face all year round, and he never shows the slightest joy, anger, sorrow or joy. Wei Bo smiled and said, "Just open the window." Fan Junmao said, "Let's change seats. Come and sit next to Tong Wenchang. Every time he takes a sip, Wei Dashan will help you take a sip, how about it?" Wei Bo said helplessly, "When I didn't say it." The Emperor Song he smiled, and he was very fond of this kind of gags that were put on the table, at least not all the ones that bored in his stomach. The 5 kings and gods of Beipingzu Mountain gathered together, each with a romantic style. Zhongyue ancient spirit, Dongyue immortal spirit, Nanyue heroic spirit, Xie chivalrous spirit, Beiyue spirit. Song He went straight to the subject and said, "First, let me tell you the good news. After your self-designed 5 sacred mountains, the Dali Rites Department handed it over to the Confucian Temple, just now, to be precise, last night. Finally there was in order to answer the exact answer, on the official document of the Confucian Temple. The content is only 1 sentence. I have read it, no objection, it can be promulgated. But the text content is small, but there are many Confucian Temple sages who signed the monogram on it. There are also 3 Confucian Temple leaders and vice-sect masters, as well as 6 academies offering wine and industry, which means that they have all agreed to this matter in writing." Song He cupped his hands and said with a smile, "The widow congratulates the 5 mountain lords here, and they all got what they wanted." The 5 mountain monarchs all stood up and returned the salute to Emperor Dali. Of course, they also needed to pay homage in the direction of the Zhongtu Confucian Temple from afar, and each expressed a few words of thanks from their hearts. The house was filled with congratulations one after another. When Wuzuan Shanjun took his seat again, Song He smiled and said, "It's really gratifying to congratulate, it's a good thing to solve the disaster. The 5 mountains are all self-made gods, and the key is that the Zhongtu Confucian Temple has passed them all, and none of them have been rejected. In fact, the Dali Rites are also very surprised. Just because of the 2 divine titles, before the Ministry of Rites helped to submit them to the Zhongtu Confucian Temple, they felt that they would most likely be rejected and redrawn. In fact, the Dali court was also mentally prepared to repeatedly communicate with the Confucian Temple on this matter, and had already worked out how the Dali Song clan would persuade the Shanjins to make up the meaning of their own gods once they were rejected by the Confucian Temple. Specific strategies to give points to reduce. Song He specially held 3 small court meetings for this purpose, which was to discuss how to help Wu Yue pass the divine title. During the discussion, it was not that no one hinted to His Majesty the Emperor. Now, the only person we can talk to at the Confucian Temple is the Luopao Mountain. However, some people think that even if Qin Pingan is willing to help in this matter, even though he is now the abbot of Wenqing Confucian Temple, will it be counterproductive? After all, this close disciple of Wenqing does not even have the title of a sage of the academy. Is this some kind of statement from the Confucian Temple? Jin Qing asked, "Your Majesty, have all the 5 divine titles passed?" Song He smiled and said, "All passed, the 5 mountain gentlemen can rest assured, it is already a sure thing, and the widow dare not lie about the military situation in this matter." Fan Junmao stretched out his palm and rubbed his chin. He didn't mention Wei Ba's spirit, but only said his divine name. The one who really gave His Majesty the Emperor a headache was the Nanyue woman Shanjun. She only mentioned one thing on the bamboo slips, saying that Nanyue's boundary, many monarchs at the foot of the mountain, and the head of the mountain hope that the imperial court of Dali considering here, whether it is possible to remove some of the stone tablets outside the patriarchal hall, not all of them, but only part of them. At that time, Song He left less than 10 bamboo slips in his hands, all of which were prepared to be taken to the imperial study for public discussion today. I don't expect Fan Junmao to be in the same camp as the Dali court. I just hope that Fan Junmao will be impartial and neutral in regard to the passage of the self-made god. After announcing the good news to the Wiyue Mountain Lord, the first thing His Majesty said was the new candidate for the junction of the Tiefu River under the jurisdiction of Beiyue. The Minister of Rites, Zhao Duanjin, stood up and shared with many landscape spirits about Bai Deng's avenues and his life experience. When Zhao Duanjin finished his narration, Tong Wenchang took off the dry tobacco from his waist and said, "First, Your Majesty, I have no opinion on Bai Deng being the Iron Fu River god of water." Song He smiled and held out his palm. "Tong Shanjun is free. After Tong Wenchang walked out of the imperial study, Song He glanced at the bamboo slips on the table and turned to look at Wei Bo. After a while, Wei Bo nodded lightly. In the imperial study, there is a chair that is always empty. A native mountain of Duli, such as Meng Rong, would occasionally look at the empty chair involuntarily. Outside the house, an old man in sackcloth with bare feet squatted under the eaves, smoking a dry cigarette leisurely, and the smoke was lingering. Taking a break from the hustle and bustle, but that's it. In the vast world, among the 5 mountains in ancient times, Xie was responsible for the casting and smelting of hardware, and also in charge of the genus of feathers and birds. At that time, in the hands of the national teacher Cui Yu, the new 5 mountains of Aquarius Island were generally divided into the same responsibilities, with a clear division of labor, and each performed his own duties. But there are different opinions on how Tong Wenchang's Ganzhou Mountain can stand out, directly from a small hill with no name, to a respected Xie of a continent. There are speculations that Tong Wenchang has entered the eyes of the national teacher Cui Yu, and some say that it is because Ganzhou Mountain has a good relationship with Cui. In short, there is no way around the word Cui. Tong Wenchang suddenly saw a pair of cloth shoes, looked away, raised his head, and saw a man in a green shirt and long coat. The typical hard words are soft words, but it still saves face for this Tong Shanjun. Tong Wenchang nodded. Don't beg if you can. I can say less, but a person's knees should be stiff, the waist should be straight, and if you want to bow your head when you are in trouble, it's nothing. You can treat yourself badly, but don't treat your conscience badly. In his life, Tong Wenchang has really seen too many scenes of infatuation and inferiority, especially the kind of flattery and mutual admiration of scholars, which is the most boring. Is reading a book to flatter people at the wine table an officialdom? Do you eat sage books and stinky shit? Thanks to those who are officials, or those who are immortals on the mountain, they just eat that way, and I am very happy to hear that. The mountain Fu Dekong, Pushun, one of the mountains of Zongyia's princes, just took out a stick of dry smoke from his sleeve after he walked out of the imperial study. When he saw the scene on this side of the corridor, he was stunned. Even the masters of the mountain gods have some personal preferences, such as collecting precious books, antique calligraphy and painting, building a study room, and asking writers to write prefaces and postscripts. Therefore, many of the secret calligraphy and paintings in the mansion of the mountain gods and Narcissus can be as long as several feet or even long. It is dozens of feet, or collects coins of various dynasties under the mountain, and some are also interested in potted plants. As for collecting Shaoshu money of various inscriptions, it is almost a common preference of landscape gods. Just like Pushun Fu Dekong, Tong Wenchang and Tong Wenchang both like to smoke dry cigarettes. They like to have a few sips when they have something to do. It has nothing to do with fatigue, it is purely a matter of habit. However, Fu Shanshan is far less addictive than Tong Shanjun, but today, Fu Dekong always hides when he can avoid such matters. Fu Dekong was overjoyed to have the opportunity to come out and take a breath. Within the capital of Dali, the gods of mountains and rivers will deliberately restrain their supernatural powers, and there is Qin Tianjian staring next to them. Chen Pingan took the initiative to say hello, Fu Shanshan. Fu Dekong clenched his fists and saluted, Master Qin Shan. Tong Wenchang knocked on the cigarette rod, stood up, and returned to the imperial study to continue listening. Fu Dekong didn't have the guts to squat outside alone to smoke cigarettes, but it happened that Chen Pingan also seemed to be going to the imperial study, so he went with him. Walking in the not wide corridor in the building, Tong Wenchang walked at the forefront, crossed the threshold, and entered the imperial study. Fu Dekong hesitated for a while, but still accelerated his pace and entered the imperial study first. Inside the house, Tong Wenchang walked to the chair, but didn't sit down. So did Fu Dekong. Standing at the door, Supervisor Seeley was in charge of the and bowed his head and said, "Your Majesty, Master Chen Shan is here." Almost at the same time, the Bing Bai brought a chair in person. Xiao Mo and Xiago stayed in the corridor. Only Jiang Shangjin followed Qin Pingan into the house. After all, it is the chief worship of Luo Pao Mountain, and the official hat is much more than the general name worship. Xiao Mo laughed heartily and said, "We are just ordinary worshippers. It is not appropriate to follow the sun to take a seat inside." Xiago leaned against the corridor wall and said angrily, "I'll ask the mountain master for a second seat to worship Dang Dang. Xiao Mo, remember to say a few good words for me." Xiao Mo nodded and said, "Whether it will be successful or not, I don't make any guarantees, but it's not a problem to say a few words to your son." "Don't say that." Xiao Mo is worried that Xiago, who has no chairs in the house to sit on, will run directly to the roof and sit on the roof. Xiaodao grinned. Jiang Shangjin took the chair and placed it near the door casually, and said with a smile, "I'll just sit here." Inside the house, His Majesty the Emperor has stood up. The old minister of the Ministry of War, who seemed to have been dozing all the time, opened his eyes, stood up slowly, and turned his head to look at the door. The Minister of Rites, Zhao Duanjin, got up, held his breath, and looked solemn. Beiyue Weibo and Zhongyue Jinqing were the first to get up with His Majesty the Emperor. Yanghua, Ho Yanghua of Changchun of Dadu, Chao Rong, Lilibo, all got up with them. Fan Junmao looked strange, her eyes wandering, as if hesitating whether to run away. The whole house stands. Song He's eyes sparkled, he stretched out a palm, pointed at a certain chair, and said loudly, "Mr. Qin, please take a seat." It was the only chair in the imperial study that didn't seem to be corrected. Chen Pingan walked to the chair, turned around, lightly picked up the blue shirt and robe with both hands, and sat down slowly. Song He sat back in his seat, and then the whole room of landscape gods sat neatly, and the needles could be heard. Some people who thought that even if Qin Pingan was willing to take care of things, would be fine, but when they actually saw the green shirt with their own eyes, at this moment, they all felt that it was not the same thing at all. This is like a lot of Qi trainers in the world. After winning the war, just because they have never experienced the battlefield, they will feel that a wild throne monster is just like that. His Majesty the Emperor smiled and looked at the woman Shanjun. Fan Junmeo's face was full of innocence. "Your Majesty, look at what I'm doing, everything has already been said, I just want to help with a message." Chen Pingan asked, "Where is the discussion?" Song He smiled and said, "Fan Shanjun, the talent just now, is talking about the boundary to the south of Chidu, and many people want to remove the stone tablet on the mountain." Fan Junmao sighed faintly, knowing this, she would not come. Wouldn't it be better to stay in Shanjun Mansion and wait for good news? Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Excuse Fan Shanjun, make a list for me immediately." Fan Junmao looked blank, "Huh? Wait until Fan Shanjun lists the list." Chen Pingan stretched out a palm and rubbed the handle of the chair with his palm. "Shen Shangshu, Zhao Shangshu, look at the list. I will send an official document in the name of the Ministry of War and the Ministry of Rites, asking them to come to the capital of Dali, the people who restored the country and established the country, the old fairy mansion and the new school, each sent someone to come over to talk about this matter, and have a good discussion." According to an old rule, Zhao Duanjin, Minister of Rites, doesn't have to get up to discuss matters, just clasps his fists, so it should be no objection. The old minister of the Ministry of War was heavy, smiled and asked, "Did this official hear wrong? Really want to add a yamen to make up the number outside the Ministry of Rites? Shouldn't it also be issued in the name of the Ministry of Rites and Honglu Temple?" Chen Pingan smiled and said, "Honglu Temple jointly wrote the credential, which is not in line with the court etiquette, so it is only responsible for the follow-up reception. Replacing Honglu Temple with a military department of a country is in line with the etiquette system." Fan Junmao was speechless for a while. Not only regretted that he had agreed to help those guys talk about this with the Dolly court, but also annoyed Chen Pingan's aggressiveness. The old man smiled and said, "Chen Guosher, then our Ministry of War will have no objection." Sort of Coming Chapter 1177. Chapter 1177. Someone said it when the old Shangshu said this title. Emperor Dolly didn't say anything, and Chen Pingan didn't say anything either. Is Aquarius going to change again? Song. He smiled and reminded Fan Shanjun. When the empty chair, dressed in a blue shirt, was seated, the emperor who had had a headache would now have someone else's headache. Feng Shui took turns, why 30 years, only in an instant. Under the watchful eyes, Fan Junmao, no matter how reluctant he was, still had to stretch out his hand to wipe it. I saw the woman Shanjun exerted his divine power, condensing the moisture in the room to make a page of rice paper. She took another breath. The clouds and mist gathered like a ball of golden ink, and she dipped her fingers in it. After dipping in, Fan Junmao, who was so angry, was about to write on the paper, when she saw several landscape gods, including Weibo, looking at her. Puffing bag, she is not good at talking harshly with the young hidden official who must have helped a lot in the matter of the gods. The old lady is also afraid of you. What are you looking at, you right? Weibo was too lazy to bother with Fan Junmao, and the rest of the mountain and water gods in the house were punished after a few glances, and he was unwilling to provoke the new-named Tsuewei Nanhua Shanjun. After all, in a sense, Zidong Mountain is not within the territory of Dolly, then Fan Junmao will be the leader of the mountains and rivers in the vast southern part of Aquarius Island, and there is no Confucian Academy in the south, so she can manage Fan Junmao and Zidong Mountain. It seems that there is only a Confucian temple. Instead, Tong Wenchang, who was quite respectful to Fan Junmao, said, "Trouble Fan Shanjun busy with business, we are waiting in the whole room." Tong Shanjun has always been right about things and not people. Fan Junmao was furious. The surname is Tong, is it in your way? You have time to run out and smoke, but you don't have time to wait for me to make a list. Tong Wenchang still said warmly, "If Fan Shanjun needs to write his name for a long time, I will go out to smoke." Fan Junmao choked for a while. Jiang Shangjun, who was sitting at the door like a door god, smiled knowingly, as if he was discussing affairs at the God Zhuan Peak Patriarch's Hall. With regard to the removal of the monument, the Yamashita dynasty and the vassal states that revived the country and established the country wanted to completely eliminate the remaining influence of the Dolly dynasty, and gradually restore their vitality, or in recent years, a group of immortal mansions on the mountain who have established a school in the mountains. The martial arts dojo, they want to restore the situation before the war, and continue to be their gods on the mountain, not bound by any human laws. But with those stone tablets on the top of the mountain, some imperial officials who are unable to sit on an equal footing with the gods on the mountain, especially the common people at the foot of the mountain, when they encounter something, it is like, there is a law to follow, there is a reason to follow, you can rely on this to communicate with the academy. Therefore, every stone tablet is a kind of to the monks on the mountain, so whether it is a genealogy monk or Shanzei Yeshio, they do not want the stone tablet to stay in the mountain for a long time. It is better to become a page-turning old almanac. After a long time, it will be put on the shelf, no one cares. The gods here are well aware of this. In the final analysis, the imperial courts of all countries and the immortal masters on the mountain all want pure freedom. Chi practitioners on the mountain are taboos. For example, even if there is a human life dispute outside the mountain, as long as the door is closed, the gods will negotiate with the local court and the government. By giving a pension on your behalf, you can turn the big into the small. No one wants this kind of fairy days, where the sky and the ground are irrelevant, and it will never come back. Even if Confucian academies will intervene more in affairs in the future, this is a general trend, but you Dali Song clan have all returned to the boundaries north of Dadu. Fan Junmao quickly wrote the list, the handwriting was scribbled, and she pushed it gently in the direction of the chair. Not seeing any movement or ripples from Chen Pingan, the paper changed its route without any trace, and fell to the side of the desk. Emperor Song he glanced at it first, nodded, then twisted the paper, raised his hand, and smiled at Chen Pingan. Chen Pingan then reached out and took the page and said, "It will definitely not make Fan Shanjun embarrassed. If things are big or small, but there is always a lot of business, maybe they will visit the capital of Dali in the future. We can also negotiate with our Dali to negotiate a lot of mutually beneficial mountain transactions. Therefore, I have asked Fan Shanjun to bring our Dala sincerity to the Nanue realm, so as to avoid misunderstandings, which will lead to nothing turning into trouble, and good things turning into bad things." Fan Junmao nodded with a straight face. "Today you are the host, and people have to bow their heads under the eaves, so let your official prestige first, but wait, in the future you will go to Zidong Mountain or Tsaiji Mountain, Chen Pingan. If you don't eat a few closed doors, my mother will give you your surname." Did Fan Shanjun miss a few names? Chen Pingan lowered his head and looked at the list above, raised his head, shook the paper in his hand gently, and said with a smile, "The weight is too light. They are all small fish and shrimps." On the list, the Longhong dynasty with the most powerful national strength may only have the same background as Huang Tinghua. The largest immortal mansion, Fengjia Mountain, is also the master of the nascent Soul realm. During the war, there was no trace of the immortal master of Fengjiao sect. The entire sect was hidden. In addition to restoring the Lord of the Ancestral Hall, 7 or 8 feng shui treasures that have become borderless land were also collected at a very low price. Now the members of the Ancestral Hall, not to mention the identity of the guest on the mountain, just have there are as many as 5 or 6 immortal masters with titles enshrined in the title of National Master, Protector of the State, and Chief Royal Family. If Chen Pingan remembers correctly, there was a recent incident on the mountain related to Fengjiao Mountain, which caused a lot of uproar. Because an old sect site was occupied by a dove's nest in Fengjiao Mountain, he went to his country's new emperor to seek justice. A discussion that should have been decided by the emperor impartially, from the newly appointed guardian of the country, to the first and second worshippers, all of them were the immortal masters of Fengjiao Mountain. Sure enough, His Majesty the Emperor can only be a mess in the middle, be a peacemaker, while talking about calming things down, making money with peace, don't show jokes to outsiders, while favoring Feng Jiashan, the indignant Jindan Jingzhang. The door, on the spot, threatened to take all the cultivators with genealogy and relocate to the north of Dadu to join the Dali Song clan. The court didn't pay attention at all, didn't care. The emperor just said a few soft and polite words. It was obvious that he was too lazy to keep it, and if he wanted to leave, just leave. Today is different from the past. A small sect with unconnected dharma veins. The father is kind and the son is filial, the upper beam is straight and the lower beam is straight. If the father is not kind to the son, it will be difficult to be filial, and if the upper beam is not regular, the lower beam will be crooked. Those who are turbid will not be able to flow, and those who do not believe will lose their name. Therefore, it is necessary to purify the source of the original, to establish the origin of the Tao, and to clear the Haiyan River. He even gave him a list, but Chen Pingan was not satisfied yet. Fan Junmao has already made up her mind not to add the remaining names. At the same time, she will not participate in any discussions in the capital in the future. She sneered, except for the imperial courts of various countries and the sects on the mountain, in this matter, Chen Guosher should not forget. There are also those wealthy and powerful clansmen who feel that Dali Song is aggressive and unreasonable for not giving in on this matter, especially in the government and private academies, indignant scholars, clamoring to follow the Guanhu Academy. If you want an explanation, it is even more vast, and many of them are well-known scholars in the world of literature. And you should ask the Academy to invite one of your officials of the Ministry of Rights, so that they can confront the court of Dolly. Since we both like to take care of things so much, Fan Junmao, will take the blame if it's a big deal. After the headache, it's your turn, Chen Pingan and the Dolly dynasty, to be embarrassed. Zhao Duanjin, Minister of Rights, was expressionless. Face to face. You guys who are full of food all day long and do nothing, are asking Dolly to accompany Wei Li, the newly appointed Minister of Rights in Luojing, to come forward and quarrel with you, but still feel that the official position is not enough, and ask me, the Minister of Rights of the capital of Dolly, to visit in person. Lake Academy. All understand. Chen Pingan folded the piece of paper gently, put it in his sleeve, nodded and smiled. I don't accept it. After Chen Pingan took his seat, the old Shang Shu didn't doze off again. The old man held the crutches in both hands and kept smiling. I love hearing this. He was in a good mood, but what the old Shang Shu said was something else. He smiled and said, everyone's mouth is full of gold, accumulating and destroying bones. People's words are terrible. Don't file a lawsuit and go to Guanhu Academy. Another one if you're not careful, you might disturb the Confucian temple in China. What will you do then? Chen Pingan smiled and said, then they have found the right person. The old man pretended to be surprised and said to himself, if the Confucian temple sends Mao Sai from the Liji Academy to our Aquarius Island to preside over justice and help mediate disputes, if this is the case, then it will be interesting. Linlu Academy, one of the 72 academies, was built on Piyun Mountain. I believe no one would be so boring. But if it doesn't work if you sue Guanhu Academy, you have to seek justice with the Confucian temple, and as a result, Mao Sai, who was once a disciple of Wenxing, came. That's so frustrating. Fade Zishan Jin Shanjun said a fair word, in the Great Wall of Sword Qi, one punch will knock down 2 shopkeepers. When you return to Haoran, you have to change the sentence, single-handedly Chen Jianxian. Fu Dakhong, the of Pushan Mountain, coughed lightly, reminding his Shanjun not to talk like that. Yulin Mountain is also one of the mountains of Zongyia's princes. The female mountain Wan Shugue heard this and smiled. Sure enough, we are the most generous mountain monarchs, who can joke face to face and dare to speak up. As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere in the room suddenly became very strange. Chen Pingan nodded and said, of course. On the top of the booklet, some members of the genealogy will also have parentheses. For example, the chief of Luopao Mountain worships Zhou Fei. The content in the parentheses is the real name Jiang Shangzhen, the previous suzerain of Yuguizang, and the current Jiang family in Yunku Fudi. The name is dedicated to the stranger, the Taoist name is Shizhu, the old Taoist temple is located, Hao Kai, one of the 3 bright moons in the wild, Jianqiu. Another example is the candidate who has no genealogy record name to worship Xiego. The content in her parentheses is relatively long. She once used a pseudonym by Jing. The old dojo is located in the Wild Sun. The second seat of Luopao Mountain is dedicated to the candidate. Sword repair. At the end of this booklet, the seal is printed with the seal of one party, Luopaishan Chen Pingan. It is believed that the Song dynasty of Dolly will soon need to engrave an official seal for Chen Pingan, and the seal is of course, National Teacher of Dolly. It is necessary for the Ministry of Rights and Qin Tianjian to carefully select an auspicious day, the specific time of the emperor's writing ceremony, the material of the seal, and the blessings of the Wuyue Jiangdu, the Jingshi Qinghuang Temple and the Wenwu Temple. The old Shang Shu looked at the contents of the booklet and was amazed. In fact, the booklet has only 2 pages. The first page describes the members of the genealogy of Luopao Mountain, and does not record the kind of guest who can better show the incense on the mountain. On the second page, the status quo of commerce and trade is actually a little bit like a supplement to the item of Kaching. Just in the Beiju-Luzhou area, just the cooperation objects of the zone prefix, there are the Bones Beach Pima zone, the female sword fairy Li Kai's duckweed sword lake, Lu Jinglong's Taihui sword sect, in addition to the Shuilong sect and the Chongxian department of the Dayuan dynasty, have a long list of business allies on the mountain. As for their own Beipingzu, there are several names among them, and they are also very chewy, such as Zhongyu Fiasai Mountain, Pushun, Yongjiang in Jinqing, Beiyue Shenju Mountain and Nanyue Mountain in Nanyue. It is due to Chao Gingxin, the former Longquan Kiln's superintendent, for his conscientiousness and grasping small unmagnifying. Of course, there is also Pai Yunshan's unreported knowledge. Wei Shanjun and Chao Duzhao seem to have a good heart. The only exception was the splendid viewing of Xingyang Mountain, but unfortunately, apart from the mountain owner Chen Pingan, the rest of the members of Jiling Peak Patriarch Hall did not really take action. In fact, the Dali court said that it knows very little about the real family background of Luopao Mountain, which is a bit outrageous. Wei Bo looked very carefully, turned a page, and then turned back to browse the content. At the same time, it is also possible to remove the sect identity of Xingyang Mountain, which is the first sect. The imperial study fell silent again. Chen Guosher gave a good example. Fortunately, there is no Jianxian in Xingyang Mountain today to participate in the discussion. The matter is of great importance. When the time comes, the widow and Chen Guosher, together with the chief officials of the 6 divisions and the big and small 9 ministers, will discuss the feasibility of this matter together, and may finally invite Linlu Academy and Guanhu Academy to negotiate. Song He smiled and said, "Next, let's discuss the matter of filling the vacancy in Qiantang." In addition to the candidates recommended by the Dali Rights, the Marquis of Changchun and Uncle Lily have their favorite officials, Zhao Shangshu. You will circulate the 3 files to you, we will let's see who is more suitable to be the head of Qiantang, and after reading the archives, Zhao Shangshu and the 2 Ho Bo will introduce you to everyone, and then you can speak freely, and those who have long been familiar with each other will not shy away from relatives. The Minister of Rights gave 3 archival documents. Among them, Tsin Wenqian's resume was paid more attention in the house, and he took a few more glances, because the golden body of the temple has the lowest status and the lowest reputation, so that some gods only know how to jump the Po River and do not know that he Bo is Tsin Wenqian. The candidate nominated by the Hofu of Changchun this time is Tsin Wenqian. If he succeeds, he has accomplished a feat of leaping 3 steps in a row in the landscape and officialdom. So Yang Hua didn't have any hope for this. On the other hand, the nomination of his colleague Li Libo Chao Yong is obviously more likely to pass the deliberation of the Dali court, at least to compete with the candidates recommended by the Dali Rights. As soon as Chao Yong came, he was born in the old Qiantang, and the Dali court must moreover, this kind of internal promotion is more in line with the practice of Shanshui officialdom. According to the archives, the first Hu Jun of Laoyu Lake, Tsin Wenqian, served as a Shuzhou academic government in a Dali vassal state during his lifetime. Later, because he was good at economic affairs, he was transferred to a transfer envoy. He used to be the abbot of the opening of water transportation dredging and granary construction in a country, and later he had full authority. In charge of the abolition of redundant subordinate staff, the servant of the Ministry of Industry was transferred to the servant of the Ministry of Personnel, and finally he became the minister of the Ministry of Rights, but after a few days, he was soon returned to his hometown. The number text end can be described as extremely sad. No matter what, Tsin Wenqian can be considered a Jain in the emperor's heart if he can take it out to discuss matters in the imperial study of Dali. It seems that Changchun Ho Yanghua does not take this Shuifu subordinate very seriously. This is called a high-ranking official crushing people to death, and there are people in the DPRK who want to be officials. After that, Zhao Duanjin, Yang Hua and Chao Yong made supplements and introduced 3 candidates. During this period, the Marquis of Changchun spoke the least, and she finished Qin Wenqian's situation in a few words. Meng Rong took the lead in saying, the head of Qiantang is an important position, of the 3rd rank, and there are only a handful of them in one continent. The water is filled with texts, and the rivers are on both sides of the river. Since ancient times, it has been a place with outstanding people and rich cultural movements. Now it is the 4th grade on the Golden and Jade genealogy of the Confucian Temple, and it is not too exaggerated to cross the 3rd grade and serve as the head of Qiantang. Tong Wenchang said, I disagree with Meng Shanjun and recommend Qin Wenqian. Wei Bo smiled and said, I don't know anyone well. From the paper, I can't tell the difference, each has its own advantages. Saying it means not saying it. Fan Junmao said, I don't even know Wei Shanjun well, so I'm even more blinded. Jin Qing said, Wu Yun, the water of Zhejiang, has a strong personality and has been the chief assistant of Qiantang for a long time. The 2 rivers have the same origin, and the water is naturally connected, so it is more suitable to fill the gap. The old minister of the Ministry of War smiled and said, that's why historically it was necessary to build tall towers to control the tide. Chao Yong looked embarrassed. Chen Pingan asked, Xiao Shangshu, is there Qin Wenqian's resume and evaluation in the Department of Engineering of the capital city? If there is, I can take it out today as a reference. Zhao Duanjin replied, yes. You can get it right away. Chen Pingan nodded and said, then there will be Lao Zhao Shangshu who will immediately send someone to take a look at it. Fan Junmao leaned against the back of the chair and let out a soft snort, which was slightly better than the undisguised sneer. Yu Guosher said so, the people here are not fools, everyone is still talking about shit, is it a waste of saliva, just let Qin Wenqian be the head of Qiantang. If it weren't for the inappropriate location, Jiang Shangjin, who was sitting at the door, would have wanted to give this woman Shanjun a thumbs up. Zhao Duanjin rubbed a jade plaque on his waist, and then shook his sleeves again. In front of him, there appeared a pocket wooden model of Nangxinfang and Kejiao Lane on both sides of the Qianbu corridor. He was not a cheap practitioner. The minister of the Ministry of Rights moves skillfully, and the scenes are constantly changing. This kind of error correction is nothing more than a stronger force. Any major reform that needs to be discussed repeatedly by the Zai is medication. But those measures, regardless of size and error correction, are considered as dietary supplements for 3 meals a day. When His Majesty the Emperor approves Qin Wenqian, then the appointment of Chief Qiantang will be finalized. In today's discussion, the Marquis of Changchun, who hardly had any sense of existence, breathed a sigh of relief. Yang Hua glanced at the man in the blue shirt from the corner of his eye. Jiang Shangjin wrote it down silently, intending to return to Luopao Mountain and tell Xiaoman about this detail. He would never add oil and vinegar. The emperor looked at Wei Bo and asked, does Wei Shanjun have a proposal? Wei Bo nodded and said, in my jurisdiction of Beiyue, Yiqingzhu, the water of the Yuye River, has always wanted to replace the Jianghe Dojo. This small matter was a suggestion written by Wei Bo on the bamboo slip in advance. Wei Shanjun was just looking for trouble. Zhao Duanjin, Minister of Rights, got His Majesty's gaze, stood up, walked to the blank wall opposite the desk, raised his arm and swiped down suddenly, and opened a landscape painting scroll. Zhao Duanjin picked up the long drawing stick on the side. I clicked on a few places on the screen, all of which are the former site of the Jianghe Temple where the priesthood is now temporarily vacant. They appeared one by one. As Zhao Duanjin's bamboo pole pulled them, they dropped one by one in the air in the center of the 2 rows of chairs. Annotated texts, miniature buildings, and the prototypes of rivers that meander like snakes hovered and stopped together, and then Master Shang Shu began to explain the water quality, origin and many tributaries of these rivers. His Majesty the Emperor smiled knowingly, because seeing the new national teacher, he had already started to close his eyes and rest. It is rare for Mr. Chin, whose real body is still teaching in the village school, to have such a thing that he has nothing to do with himself. The old Shang Shu Shinshin also started squinting and dozing off. Outside the house, Xiago leaned his back against the wall, yawned, reached out and patted his mouth lightly, remembering something, and couldn't help asking in his heart, Xiao Mo, why did our mountain master temporarily change his mind? Xiao Mo replied, young master said that this is a matter of rush, and when the time is right, it will come naturally, and it is a matter of course. According to the son's first plan, he planned to decide whether or not to go to the capital of Dali after finishing the 3 private affairs. Yuxuan's capital has been dealt with, so he went to Longquan Jianzhong to be the best man, and then traveled to Hauran 6 continents with his friends. This kind of thing, Xiao Mo will not cover up Xiago deliberately. Xiago asked again. The mountain master came out this time to serve as Dali's national teacher, Song Changjing, and the Luo King Song Mu, it's Song Binchai from Ni Ping Lane, so they all have no opinion? Xiao Mo smiled and said, I don't know. The son didn't say anything. Xiago said, if the mountain master doesn't say it, you won't ask. Xiao Mo said, I'm not interested in these things. Xiago grinned and said, as the second seat of worship, we mountain masters don't know how to say hello to me in advance for such a big thing, it's too rare. Xiao Mo smiled and said, this is a proposal I made not long ago. The son thinks it is feasible, so he will take it seriously, because Chief Zhou has just returned to Luopa Mountain, and the son originally planned to hold a meeting of the Ancestors' Hall in the near future, and then bring it out and say it. Say, let's see everyone's opinion. Xiago rolled his eyes and said, what are you doing with so much effort? We Luopa Mountain have always been the words of the mountain master. We just don't talk about it, and our hearts are very open. Xiao Mo shook his head and said, it's not like that. Xiago was full of disapproval. Xiao Mo explained, it's not surprising that you think so. If Mr. Zhu hadn't explained my doubts to me, I would have misunderstood Mr. Zhu. According to Mr. Zhu, it's because Mr. Zhu has an abacus in his heart, and those who have made decisions when it comes to openly discussing things with us, the young master has taken care of all of us early. Therefore, at first glance, there is no objection. In fact, if there is any objection, as long as anyone will be embarrassed, the son will not at all. Speak up. Xiago sighed, being a mountain master is so exhausting, and becoming a national teacher, is it still good? Xiao Mo smiled and said, I don't know what the young master's mentality will be like when he becomes a national teacher. But when he is only the mountain master, the young master doesn't feel tired at all, but feels very happy. Xiago asked, did he tell you that again? Xiao Mo shook his head and said, you don't need to tell me, everyone else can see it, what do you think? Xiago nodded quickly, that's a must, we can all see such a simple fact. On the other side of the house, when the new site of the ancestral temple was chosen for the goddess of the Yuya River, Song He said with a smile, suspend the discussion, you can rest for a quarter of an hour. Just waiting for these words, Tong Wenchang touched the cigarette stick and glanced at Qin Pingan. The latter nodded tacitly. Tong Shanjun looked at Fu Dekong again, and the latter also nodded. The 3 of them stood up almost at the same time, walked out of the imperial study, and then came to the corridor under the eaves. The 3 same fellows, who were not familiar with each other, started to squat and smoke cigarettes. Fu Dekong, the of Pushun Mountain, is still unclear for the time being. He followed the 2, and he squatted like a gourd. It became a habit for him to come to the imperial study room in the capital of Dali in the future. It's traditional. In fact, there are not many people who come out of the house to breathe. They still stay in the imperial study and take the opportunity to chat with His Majesty the Emperor, and more. Seeing that no one took the initiative to greet him and chat, Jiang Shangjin got up angrily, crossed the threshold, came to the corridor, and said with a smile, "Mr. Mo, Miss Ya." Xiao Mo has always been dressed in yellow hat and blue shoes, but instead is the girl in the sable hat with blushed cheeks. She stepped on a pair of snow-white flying cloud shoes, and there are clouds under her feet, which means soaring. Xiao Mo smiled and said, "Chief Shou has worked hard." Xiago said with a smile, as expected of Chief Shou, "He is so powerful." Jiang Shangjin said with a smile, "Stand up with a sullen face. When you go out, you must stand up the golden signboard enshrined by the chief of Luopa Mountain." "I don't usually do this, and am very good at talking." Xiao Mo smiled and said, "Jing Qing said that Chief Shou has a good drink. Mr. Zhu and Xiaomi both said that Chief Shou's wine is better." Jiang Shangjin smiled brightly, "Actually, my alcohol intake and wine quality are average. It's just that I vomit after drinking and drinking." Xiago said, "Jing Dafeng said that the Xianjia wine brewing on our mountain is the treasure that Chief Zhou bought at a large price, and the money is generous. Others buy several jars and several jars. Purchase." Jiang Shangjin began to scold himself, "A stupid person has more money." Chief Shou chatted like this, Xiago couldn't keep up. Xiao Mo said, "Chief Shou can make money and spend money. He doesn't worry about money or worry about money. Cultivation should be like this." Jiang Shangjin hurriedly reminded himself to be restrained, and almost blurted out, "Xiao Mo, both of them are his own brothers, why divide you and me, just take the title of chief enshrined." Fan Junmao was almost pulled out of the imperial study by Wei Bo. Judging by her posture, she was about to ask Qin Shanju Xingshi to ask her guilt. It seems that Qin Daijiangxian is chatting with Tong Shanjun, saying that the mountains are not high, and there are immortals. High potential is good for danger, high road is good for safety. After Tong Wenchang heard this comment, he rarely squeezed out a smile. Fan Junmao was even more angry. Chen Pingan raised his head, stretched out his hand and waved a little smoke, and said with a smile, "Fan Shanjun, why bother, you are not a person with good face." Fan Junmao almost turned around and left. Bad face, and no face, can be the same thing. The woman Shanjun, who was about to receive the Tsuewei divine title, was about to move when she heard Qin Pingan laughed heartily. "In the house, it's not bad to break the rules. I'm here to give Fan Shanjun a congratulations. Zitongshan is a little different from the other 4 mountains. The Confucian Temple will give Nanyue an additional plaque, the Green Mountains in the world. As for where to hang this plaque, whether it is the gate of the mountain, the gate of the mansion, or the study, it depends on Fan Shanjun's personal I like it." Tsuewei is another name for the mountain, and as the name of the mountain god, it cannot but be said that it is a miracle in the landscape. In the history of Beiju Luzhou, there was once a sect called a behemoth. It was the leader of the immortal mansion on the mountain in the south of the continent. Tsuewei. By the time Dizong of Qing dynasty became a thing of the past, the name of the sect on the mountain related to Tsuewei, and the Taoist name of Qi practitioners were always vacant at the Confucian Temple. Any application was rejected. The reason is unknown. In addition, there is a Tsuewei Chu clan in the Middle Earth Divine Continent. It is a 1,000-year-old nobleman. In his early years, he was a worshipper of Mao cultivation at Denglongtai in the old Dragon City. But this Tsuewei belongs to the place name. Therefore, Fan Junmao's self-proclaimed divine name, Tsuewei, and then passed the review and inspection of the Confucian Temple, is a huge leak. Fan Junmeo's eyes widened. Really? Chen Pingan said helplessly, can this kind of thing be a joke? The content of such a big plaque is not dared to be written by anyone. Even if there is such a stupid scholar, Fan Junmao would not dare to hang it without authorization. You are stupid and I am stupid. Determined that Chen Pingan was not joking, Fan Junmao couldn't hide his joy, although I know it's a way to hit a sap and then give a jujube to eat. Speaking of this, Fan Junmao laughed out loud, reached out and rubbed his cheeks. It doesn't matter, I also recognize it. It's not a problem to come back a few times like this. Wei Bo teased next to him. How many ways does a slap give a candy to eat? I like this kind of slap, too. I'm afraid of the pain in the face, because I'm afraid that the opponent's palm will be swollen and won't want to slap again. Fan Junmao sat down on the steps. Chen Pingan stopped speaking, and said with a smile, Fan Shanjun doesn't dislike the smog now. Fan Junmao shook his sleeves. Isn't there Wei Shanjun present? Reciprocating the favor, Fan Junmao just wanted to tell Chen Pingan about the forces hiding behind the scenes. I never thought that Chen Pingan immediately guessed her intention, waved his hand, and said again in his heart, I said something that won't embarrass you, but it's not a scene, otherwise why would I deliberately add fuel to the fire and say something more to you? List how many are missing from the above. Just seeing that you are angry, I am sure that you will not go on saying what I want, otherwise if you agree to complete the list, I will make an exception and remind you with my heartfelt words in the room. One sentence, we can cooperate and play a show. If it is very good now, it is the face of Dali Song to Zitong Shan, and Fan Shanjun will save face for those who slip through the net. Going down a step, the result is still the same, but it will not make the relationship too stiff. If they understand a reason that is not an example, that is the best. Don't blame Dali for not showing any affection. Fan Junmao was speechless for a while, silent for a long time, a little annoyed. Chen Pingan, please help me and see, are you born a piece of material for an official, or am I born unfit to be an official? Chen Pingan smiled and said, to treat an official as not like an official, and not to move the nest, not to be pushed to the Qingshui Yamen to sit on the bench, and even to make the official bigger and bigger, that is the real skill. Fan Junmeo's face was indifferent, and he said with a smile, just listen to these big truths. Chen Pingan smiled and said, Fan Junmao, just listen and see. Let me say another big truth about someone said it. Fan Junmao raised his eyebrows, raised his hand, and flicked his ears, for the sake of that plaque, tell me, I'll listen. The big deal is that the left ear goes in the right ear and goes out. Chen Pingan took a big puff of dry cigarettes, and spit out the smoke leisurely, but he was speechless for a long time, just stared blankly at the front, as if it was a place not far or near. Fan Junmao gave a feeding, reminding Chen Pingan not to be dazed. Wei Bo sat beside her. This woman, Shan Jun, once stayed alone in the lonely Zitong mountain. Facing the savage army of monsters that came from all directions like a tide, she seemed to speak with the whole world silently and boldly. Crack, the old lady really won't leave. Chen Pingan recovered and said sorry to her with a smile, and then he really started with, someone said it. You don't have to pretend to be close to the world, and you don't have to pretend to be distant from this world. You should be reasonable, and you should not be too thick or too thin. We are still us, we are us. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.